Good evening and welcome to the April 19th meeting of the Manhattan City Commission. Welcome tonight. We have a full house. That's unusual, but we're glad you're here. If you would join me first in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. What's your back?
Yeah. The first item on the agenda is a proclamation designating April 2022 as Child Abuse Prevention Month. So I believe that Carson Kober, Executive Director of the Sunflower Court Appointed Special Advocates, CASA, Stepping Stones Child Advocacy Center, and Sunflower Bridge Child Exchange and Visitation Center, and Megan Kramer, Board President of Sunflower CASA, will be present to receive the proclamation. If you'd join me, please. Okay. Whereas, the National Child Abuse Prevention Month will be recognized throughout the United States during April 2022, and preventing child abuse and neglect is a community problem that depends on involvement among people throughout the community. Child maltreatment occurs when people find themselves in stressful situations without community resources and don't know how to cope. The majority of child abuse cases stem from situations and conditions that are preventable in an engaged and supportive community. Child abuse and neglect can be reduced by making sure each family has the support they need to raise their children in a healthy environment. Child abuse and neglect are not only directly harm children, but also increase the likelihood of criminal behavior, substance abuse, I need to breathe regularly, health problems such as heart disease and obesity, and risky behaviors such as smoking. All citizens should become involved in supporting families and raising their children in a safe and nurturing environment. Now, therefore, I, Linda Morse, Mayor of the City of Manhattan, do hereby proclaim April 2022 as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Manhattan and call upon all cities, all citizens, community agencies, religious organizations, medical facilities, and businesses to increase their participation in our efforts to prevent child abuse. I'll present this to you if you'd like to say a few words. Yeah.
Hi.
Identify yourself.
I'm Carson Kober. I'm the Executive Director of Sunflower Children's Collective, but Megan Kramer, our president, is going to talk a little bit tonight. But afterwards, I didn't expect this many people, but we did bring these awesome pinwheel cookies because pinwheels are for Child Abuse Prevention Month. You may have seen some all over the city, so please grab your pinwheel cookie. 60 of you will get one.
Thank you for recognizing this month. It's very important to Carson and I just want to give a few words about the work that the Children's Sunflower Collective does. I hope many of you already know about CASA. Those are the folks that are with our children that are in the court system. They are the voices for those children. We also have the Civic Center, which is a visitation center that's a safe environment for parents to come and visit their children with somebody watching over and making sure the kids and the parents are safe. We also have the CAC Center, which provides forensic interviews for children that have been abused. It's a safe place for them to share what happened with trained individuals, and Manhattan is very blessed to have these folks in our community to help our children when unfortunately things like this do happen. So I'd like to give a shout out to the staff. They're small but mighty. They don't get paid to do the work. They do it because they love it. The volunteers, we could not do it without the volunteers, so if you are looking for something to do, please contact Carson. We're always looking for volunteers. And don't forget that Friday is Grow Green with the foundation, so if you make a donation to CASA, 50% of those funds will be matched. So consider doing that, please.
Thank you.
All right,
Oh, thank
thank
both.
you.
Thank you so much.
We're fortunate to have such an active CASA group here in Manhattan. So thank you. Appreciate you bringing it to our attention. Next item on the agenda is commissioner comments. And I would say there are no public comments tonight. That occurs at the first meeting of the month, but not the third.
General public.
The general public comments, like we do at the beginning. So commissioner comments. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I want to say, I think the Grow Green Day was referenced earlier. So we have so many nonprofits in our community, and typically on April 22nd, or even now, before April 22nd, you should, consider donating to one of your favorite nonprofits. If you go to the Greater Manhattan Community Foundation, all of them are listed. So here's a great chance to see them all in one spot and give what you can, either on April 22nd or before. Also, all 3 of our pools will be open this year, so you can get your season passes, and I believe it starts the last weekend in May. So they're on sale right now, and we've had a lot of celebrations the last few days at the Sunset Zoo for the Asian Expedition opening and the Flint Hills Discovery Center and their 10th anniversary, and also highlighting Bruce Sneed's commitment to the project for a decade now. And at that time, Commissioner Hattusall was also part of that decision-making process. So we're very thankful for it, and it's thriving. And if you're visiting, you should go visit the Discovery Center also. I also wanted to highlight, I'm president of Rotary Club of Community Action Against Human Trafficking. We are an E-Club, and we are having our 2nd annual Human Trafficking Summit. It's via Zoom, and it's focused on what can financial institutions do to stop human trafficking. It's from 9 to 10:30 in the morning. We have a keynote speaker who's going to speak to the cryptocurrency, dark money, businesses, and all kinds of red flags and signs to see. We also have a panelist where a survivor will tell you about how she was able to go to all of these banks with boatloads of cash and deposit it, and nobody really caught her, and how she was used in that manner. So if you have interest in human trafficking, or if you're an organization that's looking at how to highlight some of these issues that are happening in our community, child abuse was just recognized, trying to find a way to solve it. So that's all part of the process. I really encourage you to email me if you want more information. The organization is called CAT Club, Community Action Against Human Trafficking. So once again, hopefully you can join us. Thank you.
We haven't, as a commission or individually, addressed the situation in the Ukraine with Russia's invasion. And I just think it's important. We're so close to Fort Riley, and we have a lot of families impacted by that situation. So I think it's important that we express some empathy and understanding for what's happening there. It's really serious, and we've let it go by a couple of months. We're just, things are just escalating slowly, and that's not healthy either. So I just wanted to mention that. And next item on the agenda then is the consent agenda. And the items on the consent agenda are those of a routine and housekeeping nature, or those items which have previously been reviewed by the commission. A commissioner may request an item be moved to the end of the general agenda for more discussion. Does the commission have any questions or comment on any of the consent agenda items?
Yes, I'd like to move items J1D, E, and F to the end of the general agenda.
J1, E, D,
E and F.
E and F. 1E and F. Okay, all right. 1E and F.
D.
I'm sorry.
D is in dog. D is in dog.
Okay, 1 1D, E, and F?
Yes.
All right. Okay, just, it's catching the sound. Okay, all the way down the table. Okay.
And I
So-
just want to make a comment on item H. It's a bid award on the lake, out by Annabrook Park. And, it's $84,000, but only 15% of that is the city, the rest is grants. And that's a good thing, and I'm glad to see the lake getting fixed. That was pretty bad, having the parking lot wash into it, when we had the
Yeah.
flood. So that's going to be a great improvement for Parks and Rec.
Okay, are there any other comment, any other consent? All right, we have, is there further discussion, I guess? Is there a motion then? Hello, public comment. If you have a comment on any of the items on the consent agenda, would you please come forward? Seeing no one, I'll close the public comment period. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented, with those three items being moved to later.
So the exception would be appointments, item 1D, 1E, and 1F.
Exactly.
All right.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to proceed with the consent agenda with all those in favor, raise your, no, Brenda, please call the roll.
Mayor Morris,
Yes.
Commissioner Hassel,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. So we have approved the consent agenda. The next item is the general agenda. And the first item is A, to consider a resolution declaring the intent of the city to support the location of Scorpion Biological Services, Inc., 2 Manhattan, Kansas, in the form of industrial revenue bonds and economic development incentives. And the presenter is Jason Hilgers. No, it isn't?
Another Jason. Jason, we'll have Jason in a minute.
All right, it's Jason Smith, the
Yes.
director at the executive director at the Chamber of Commerce. It's not what it says here. That's all I'm saying.
Jason's our closer.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name's Jason Smith, President and CEO of the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm here to open our presentation regarding Scorpion Biologics and that company's desire to build a new manufacturing facility in Manhattan. Before we go further, I want to thank each of you for coming to the announcement yesterday, and in particular Mayor Morse, who delivered a great welcome, and we appreciate you all showing your support by being there yesterday. With me today is Darren Solden, Director of Economic Development for the Chamber, as well as Jeff Wolf, Chairman of Scorpion Biologics, and as I mentioned, Jason Hilgers will round out the presentation. I'm going to be brief, as Darren and Jeff can address the project specifics and Jason can address the process. But I want to say that we are incredibly excited about the opportunity presented to us when Scorpion made its announcement yesterday. This project is the kind that has the potential to change the economic landscape for years to come. I want to hit a few highlights before turning it over to Darren. The projected investment of over $600 million by the company makes Monday's announcement the largest private sector announcement in the history of Manhattan. According to a recent article in the Manhattan Mercury, it was reported that the largest private investment would be the Art and Light Museum. Scorpion would ultimately be nearly 20 times larger. And unlike the significant public investments made by Kansas State and Fort Riley, the Scorpion facility will ultimately be assessed and be on the tax rolls. The average salary of the projected 500 workers at Scorpion will be 70% higher than the current average salary in Manhattan, which is $44,000. According to Impact Data Source, an economics firm in Austin, Texas, 3 years for the city. The funding for the jobs grant will come from the dedicated economic development sales tax approved by Manhattan voters and should not affect any other operational funds of the city. For these reasons, among others, our Board of Directors is asking the Commission to approve the resolution in front of you today. And before I turn it over to Darren, I just want to make a couple of additional comments. I want to thank the City Manager's Office, who was very instrumental in helping us with this project from the beginning, so last May when we initially got the RFP. There have been a number of other individuals on staff. Anytime we've needed anything, they have responded in a very timely, professional, and thorough manner. And I just want to publicly thank all of them at this time. And hopefully at a later point we can go through and list all of them by name. But I just want you to know you should be proud of your staff for all the hard work that they've done on this project as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darren.
Thank you, Jason. Good evening, Commissioners. I'd echo what Jason said. Appreciate your attendance at the announcement event that was held on Monday morning. I feel that A, our community was very well represented, and B, we presented very well on a big stage, and commend all of you for your role in that event. So I'm going to take a few minutes just to give an overview of the project, and then we're going to have the opportunity to hear from the company. We've got a number of representatives from the company that are joining us here this evening, and then ultimately Jason Hilgers will review the technical details of the resolution. So an overview, Scorpion Biological Services, what they are looking at doing here in the Manhattan area is a commercial biomanufacturing facility, approximately 500,000 square feet. Total investment there, building, equipment, and everything in the $650 million range. And I think it's important to remember as well that they've engaged a very experienced development team. So as was noted in the company's release yesterday, they are working with the Realty Trust Group, who's a development team out of Tennessee, as well as CRB, for engineering and design out of Kansas City, and that's a group that has a lot of experience and a lot of experience, particularly in this area. Where I think a lot of impact on our community, and we talk a lot about, in economic development, about job creation and high-paying job creation. 500 jobs is obviously incredibly impactful to the community. Would immediately become, when at full operations and full employment, one of our major employers, and especially right at the top of our major private sector employers in the community. Average salary is over $75,000, and as Jason noted, that's a little bit more than 70% of the average current salary in the community. To overview those economic development incentives that are being proposed, $8 million in job creation incentive. This would be economic development incentive structured as a forgivable loan. That is part of, and then that would have measurement related to capital investment and job creation and metrics that would have to be met over time. The issuance of an industrial revenue bond for the amount of the building construction, which would facilitate the sales tax, two things. First, the sales tax exemption for construction materials, and two, the property tax abatement. 10-year, 100% property tax abatement has been proposed. That is the cost of being competitive in these types of projects, and can assure you that other communities that we're competing against for these types of projects have those types of tools at play, if not more. And I do want to remind you, everybody, that we're talking about items here that are proposed. And so there's an application and a review process, a public consideration process, obviously, on all of these components that will have to take place. The company is well aware of that, and we've been engaged with them in their process to get towards that application. So that application has not been made yet, but when it is made officially, it will kick into the approved process that we followed with other projects. So despite the fact that this is a very large project and in scope and scale, the process that will be followed will be the same. And so we'll be following that process of application review, ultimately working towards public consideration by this body. So I'll take just a minute to talk a little bit about why this project aligns so well with our economic development pillars that we've talked to you before about. First off, recovery. Obviously, we're in many ways, as a business community, still looking at recovery coming out of issues caused from the COVID pandemic. And we've talked over and over about private sector job growth and economic diversification and how that needs to be front and center going forward in this community, and this project checks the boxes on that item. So we talked about jobs and wages and in a sector that has a lot of opportunity, not just for the job creation, but for the talent attraction. Jobs and talent go hand in hand, and the fact that you have an industry, a sector here where folks at a variety of different educational levels, a variety of different backgrounds, have the opportunity to come in, whether it's transitioning from K-State or transitioning out of the military, graduating from K-State. This is immediately going to become an opportunity to keep folks here, to retain them in the community, retain them in the area. It's also going to be a great opportunity to put folks into a pipeline or a pathway where through some training they can go for a period of time, whether that's 2 years or 18 months, and train to work in this field. And I think that's really exciting for all of us. So whether that's a high school student graduating from an area high school and going and getting 2 years of training and having a great opportunity in the facility, or it's a biology major graduating from K-State that's going and getting some lab experience and then being able to work directly in the facility, or a PhD that's being attracted here to do research and work with what the company's doing. So a great opportunity to attract and retain talent. And then finally, very strong partnerships with Kansas State University. There's some research partnerships that are being worked on and have been put in place, master research agreement, and the opportunities here as it relates to us leveraging innovation are incredibly high. So with that, we truly believe this is a great opportunity for the community. It fits very closely with our economic development strategy that the Chamber of Commerce has a contract with the city to fulfill. And with that, I would like to take the opportunity here to welcome up Jeff Wolf, who is the chairman of Scorpion Biological Services, and Jeff is going to share a little bit more about the company and their project here. So Jeff, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be presenting before all of you today.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. And we really couldn't be more excited to be part of this community. It's been a long process, and really from the moment we first landed in Kansas in August, we saw really a natural fit between not only the objectives of both what Manhattan is looking to achieve and what we're looking to achieve, but also the cultural fit between what we believe and what we want to do, and the culture in Manhattan as well. We are so excited to be here. We really appreciate your consideration of our request, and happy to address any questions that you have.
Commissioners, do you have questions?
Great.
I think we've been given a packet of information and had the opportunity to meet with you and your representatives. So it seems like at this point we don't have any questions. So it's a big project. And our Chamber of Commerce typically vets these projects, and I think Darren and Solden and Jason Smith have done that well. So I think.
Great. Excellent.
Thank you
Well,
very
thank
much.
you so much.
Appreciate you being here this evening and this week, actually.
Well, thank you so much for your
Yeah.
consideration.
It's great. Thank you.
Commissioner, so on your agenda this evening, there's a resolution of intent. As Darren mentioned, it's not a binding action by way of any agreements, but it is a recognition of what has been negotiated and what will be considered in the future. City staff, chamber staff, in addition to the companies that we'll be dealing with, will entertain documents and agreements in the future. We anticipate all the application process, whether that be for economic development incentives or itself for the industrial revenue bonds. We have a number of examples in our community where we have entertained IRBs. This will be no different, other than the numbers will be significantly higher. But the process is the same. We work with bond counsel out of Wichita, and they will follow state statute and facilitate that process with us. For the economic development incentives, we obviously will look at those, negotiate contracts, development agreements, and bring those back to you all for consideration. The two things identified in this resolution really have to do with those two things, the $8 million in economic development incentives and the issuance of IRBs, which leverage both the sales tax exemption along with the property tax abatement. So that's what this document is in front of you this evening. We're looking for a motion for consideration of these things. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point, but a lot of specifics obviously are yet to come. And I would anticipate in the next coming weeks and months, we'll be back before you with those agreements. Any questions at this point?
This is the kickoff, and this is the point at which we have a resolution. Okay. So at this point, thank you, Jason. We have no questions evidently. At this point, we're going to open a public comment period. And after that, the commission will have an opportunity to ask city staff for more clarification or offer comments on this item. Does the commission, none of the commissioners have no other questions right now? We will now receive public comment on this item. If you didn't sign up in advance, and I don't think anybody did, please be sure to write your name and address on the sign-up sheet at the podium. Each speaker must also state their name and residential address for the record and for audience members. Each speaker has a maximum of 5 minutes and must stop speaking when the timer sounds. We want to hear your comments on this item before we vote, but neither the commissioners nor the staff will be able to answer the questions or debate an issue. So would anyone like to come forward? Whoops. Linda, I would ask that you speak into one of the microphones. When you stand in the middle, the audience
This
nor
one?
we,
Okay, thank you.
neither one of us can hear in the middle.
My name is Linda Wise. I'm the broker owner of Realty Executives Wise Real Estate, and I live at 215 Pine Drive. I want to offer my support for this project. I did have some questions. When you're talking about 1,000 people, I think there's some concern that all 1,000 will come at one time, and we've had some questions from community residents about how long the process will take to construct, when can you expect the people to come, how is this going to affect our schools, how is it going to affect everything. I want you to know I really support this. This is something that we really, really, really need. Another question that's come is, so what is their product? We understand, so is this for animal health? Is it human health? Is it One Health? What is their product, and how will that benefit the society? And so I think a couple of people have asked me that they would like a little clarification. So is there anything you'd like to ask me? Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. We appreciate you stepping forward. Does anyone else wish to speak? Okay, seeing no one, I'll close the public comment period. And
Jeff, could you come up and just answer those couple questions as far as just give a little bit of a, for those people that haven't read the newspaper, or Dave, whoever, give us a 3-minute elevator speech about what you guys
might
do.
introduce David, too.
Great, and I'm being joined by David Halverson, who's the president of our Scorpion subsidiary. So, David, if you'd like to address the question, what we actually do at the facility and what we actually
Certainly.
produce.
I mean, the first question on the timing of people, we anticipate the 50% of the facility in the first 18 months to 2 years, with another 20, 20, and 10 afterwards. The facility will not be fully functioning with all 500 people until approximately year 6. So we do have some time to make up for and get some infrastructure and everything. We're not going to just drop 1,000 people here and take over Manhattan in mass.
No.
The other question is that Scorpia Biological Services is a biomanufacturing for biologics, therapeutics, and vaccines for humans. We don't have any plans, and we don't have the existing capabilities or infrastructure to be able to do animal welfare drugs inside there. We will be an FDA-directed facility, not an EPA-directed facility, so it will be for the betterment of humans and humans only. If we were going to do an animal health, we would have to put that in a separate building by regulation. So, and to address some of the questions, about 10%, 15% of the facility will actually be continuing on and developing Nighthawk's drugs that come and are discovered in our skunk works and developed in our Heat Biologics subsidiary. They will go to San Antonio for phase 1 through phase 3 clinical trial development. And then when the drugs are approved by the FDA, they could come to Manhattan, and that's Manhattan facility will be the 144,000 liters that will give us the ability and the firepower to actually address the needs for the entire United States. San Antonio has a maximum liter capacity of 2,000 liters, where Manhattan will have a maximum liter capacity of 144,000 liters. So completely different operational structures. San Antonio doesn't compromise Manhattan. Manhattan does not compromise San Antonio. They're cooperative companies that actually help as a feeder pipeline. San Antonio will feed Manhattan.
Are there other, thank you very much. I think
Welcome.
that covers it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda, for your questions.
Yes, if I may. There were some other questions that came up. Scorpion Biological Services is a BSL Level 2 facility. NBAth is a BSL Level 4 facility. We will have no live viruses. We will have nothing there. And quite honestly, nothing would upset me more than having a live virus or a microbe in my facility that would compromise $300 million worth of product. So just to put the community at ease, we will do nothing with any strains in any live viruses, anything. Scorpion will not have anything to do with any of that at all.
And you will be the leader of the manufacturing plant here?
Correct. ma'am.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Does anyone else did I close public comment? I did. All right, very good. Thank you all for wanting to understand. This is a big project, and it's hard to get your arms around a little bit because we aren't used to thinking in BL level 2, 3, or 4. We know that NBAF is a level 4, and BRI is 3, and now you are 2, and so we're learning. So thanks for your patience with us, actually. It's two-way here, two-way street. So, yes, please.
Mayor, I move that we.
Can I make one other
Oh,
comment?
sure.
Just to clarify, because this has come up, if you look at the resolution, section 1 there says the governing body supports the location of Scorpion in the city of Manhattan. If you look at the map, it's not currently in the city of Manhattan, so this implies a spot annexation of that. Is that correct, to state it that way?
It's an island annexation. But
Right, island annexation, okay. But just to make clear, because some people are saying, that, the city's going out to try to do this, as part of the overall agreement to make that happen, because it facilitates fire services and some other things. So just so that's clear, and then the rest of it, I think, is pretty self-explanatory in what was presented.
And it won't be any different than the heritage development, commercial development we have east of here. It's an island annexation also.
Can I just make a comment before you?
Please.
Okay, just a comment. Thank you for meeting with all of us and letting us understand everything that's going on such a fast track. For us, it seems like a fast track. I know you've been at it for a little while. But I did have conversations with Jason Hilders about the resolution we're speaking to tonight, and I think several of my concerns were met. But more importantly, we have confidence in the strength of our partners, Governor Kelly being one of them, David Tolan from the Department of Commerce, Fort Riley, Kansas State University, our chamber. So all of these factors have a lot to do with supporting such a massive investment in our community. The community always has a lot of questions for us, and of course, they want to know how we are spending the money, the sales tax money, as well as just the property tax abatement and such. So I think it speaks volumes when you have strong partners from the state and local levels, ones we've had trusted relationships with in the past. So we are hoping you come forward with all of the other details as we move forward, and tonight is just a resolution. The economic package will come forward in the next maybe a month or two, maybe a little bit longer. But certainly this is the first step to the rest of the process. Thank you.
I think it's important to note the collaboration also between the State of Kansas Department of Commerce, the Pottawatomie County Commission, the City of Manhattan, the Chamber of Commerce. This is a regional effort, and this is a big project that will affect a lot in the surrounding counties even. So it's important that we do it right and that we have it well vetted. So I think that the Chamber of Commerce has been working on this. Darren Solden has been, and Jason Smith for some time. And we are new to it. We've been on board a week. So we're learning too. And there'll be more for all of us to learn. Any other comments?
Yeah, in some ways, I'm just echoing it, but the one thing that I have to say is, we've got the full room here, people standing in the back. It's rare we have a meeting like this with all these people, and you didn't hear a ton of commissioner comments and a ton of questions, and I think that's just credit to everyone who worked on the project, that they're comfortable with it, that it was very well vetted out, and the reasons we didn't have a lot of questions is because we already got all of our answers. And I'm not going to make a list to thank everybody, but it took a lot of work from a lot of people to get this all together on a project this big, and to bring it in and not have all those questions and get everyone on the same page is a big deal. So I just want to say thank you to everybody.
Okay, so now, Mayor, I move that we approve resolution number 04-1922-D, declaring the intent of the City of Manhattan, Kansas, to support the location of Scorpion Biological Services, Inc. to Manhattan, Kansas, in the form of industrial revenue bonds and economic development incentives conditioned upon successful negotiation and future action by the governing body.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. City Clerk Brenda Wolf, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Hassel,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Mayor Morse.
Yes, please.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was the end of that one. At this point, where am I? Thank you. Thank you for coming. Agenda item B is to consider agreements for the development and transfer of the Aggieville parking lot, which is 12th Street and Laramie specifically, or referred to as the FUZE Project, and design for improvements to 12th Street and Laramie Streets. And Jason Hilders.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. As you mentioned, we have 4 topics this evening to consider in relationship to not only the redevelopment of a parking lot that the city owns currently and operates, but for design and construction services for adjacent public right-of-way, streets, sidewalks, infrastructure below grade and above. The site that we took an RFP for about a year ago is located here where the parking lot is. This is Laramie Street. You got 12th Street just on the east. You got North Manhattan on the west. This is a layout of their first floor. One thing I would point out, originally they had submitted a concept that included the Chipotle along with the parking area. That is no longer part of the submittal. They have worked out a deal, I believe, to acquire the lot adjacent to it, which is not owned by the city. It's owned by McCullough Development. And so this project encompasses that along with the city's parking lot. A couple images that were included in your packet, just to give you a sense of size and scale of the project. Both of those address, or at least highlight, the public streets and sidewalks and the pedestrian area on 12th Street that was envisioned. So the development agreement itself, on the right-hand side of the slide is what was proposed in the RFP. As you can see, the office space square footage has dropped dramatically. A lot of that has to do with the size of the building actually shrinking. But TJ and Back Nine have remained consistent with their $40 million investment, and that investment is a major trigger point for a lot of the specifics within the agreement itself, and I'll touch on those in a minute. But it is still a 5-story building. As I mentioned, no Chipotle site, 20,000 square feet of retail, 75,000 office, 17.5 of residential. Approximately 28 parking stalls in this concept. The original had 74, so there's roughly 50 stall reduction. So the development agreement itself talks about the city transferring the site. And then Back Nine would agree to obviously bring a final approval to you all, design-wise. Minimum investment, as I mentioned, of the $40 million. They'll develop a monthly progress schedule as well. And they'll also deliver records and documents to us showing the financial capability to pull this project off. All of this is really dependent on December 1, 22. If these things don't happen, and there's a number of them that are referenced there for December 1 and 22, the agreement basically just goes away. So that schedule, also identified in the development agreement, has them commencing construction within 8 months of closing. They'll enter into a construction contract within 6 months of closing, and they will provide those monthly updates on progress per the agreement. There's a couple other sections in there that deal with natural disasters and fires and tornadoes. We have some experience here with a lot that we owned. Strasser Village was constructed, or at least halfway, and it was lit on fire. So we have incorporated language like this to prevent not really knowing where a project will go after an event like this. This actually addresses it. There's also a provision in here that if the $40 million is not realized, the developer has agreed to compensate the city for the value of the land. Now, the $2.3 million is based on the appraisal that was done a few years ago when we sold the parking lot to the Marriott Courtyard, in addition to the car wash that they developed on. So the square footage obviously is a little bigger here, so the value is a little higher. We received $800,000 for that 15,000 square feet next to the car wash where the Marriott is. This is substantially bigger than that. Transfer agreement, this actually moves the property from the city to Back Nine. And again, there's a number of contingencies that were listed in the agreement. There's pre-closing items that they must meet, but there's also post-closing. So if they're unable to perform those post-closing items, again, that's when the $2.3 million would come into effect. It's really about that minimum investment of getting them to invest. And a lot of this is predicated on our anticipation of tax increment finance revenues. The quicker they can get under construction, the quicker they can create an asset, the quicker it generates tax increment finance, TIF dollars, and those dollars then can be used back towards infrastructure within the district. The city has invested close to $30 million to date. And this is a major project to help us fund that $30 million in infrastructure and the parking garage. If they're unable to perform, the land transfers at no cost to Back 9. That kind of covers the relationship with Back 9. We're going to move into the construction manager at risk portion. And this is really about 12th Street, and this is about Laramie Street in adjacency to the proposed development itself. We approached BHS, and under our charter ordinances allows us to consider a different process than a traditional design bid build. We've entered into construction manager at risk contracts before, and in this case, we felt like it would be to our advantage to work with the selected builder for the developer to coordinate those public improvements. Aggieville is a tight area. We've ran into some issues with our public infrastructure going in adjacency to a private development. We're trying to avoid some of those issues. They would essentially incorporate our calendar, our schedule with the project, so hypothetically in August of 2024, both would be opening at the same time. So we really wouldn't look to start construction of 12th Street or Laramie Street until probably summer of 23, giving it a full year for both 12th Street and Laramie Street to be under construction and completed. But then it would put that responsibility back on that BHS to coordinate both the private venture along with the public. We did some of this on the south end and it worked out really well. It's not always available, but with BHS and our partnerships that we've had in the past, we felt comfortable approaching this local contractor to get this work done. So they have generated an agreement with the city. We've developed that and it is part of the packet this evening. They have $15,000. Let me describe the projects a little bit real quick. So this is North 12th Street. So this is the pedestrian mall that when we hired Olson back in 17 and 18 along with OHH, they put together this segment of roadway between Morrow and Laramie on 12th Street. It's an extension of somewhat like we did just north of there, adjacent to Tanner's and So Long and Lucha, but this would actually involve a complete closure to vehicles. This concept is where the starting point would be unless we hear differently this evening. We keep in close contact with the ABA and businesses to make sure, is this still in the cards? Is this still something folks in Aggieville want to see and support? We believe it is at this point. We're always open to that feedback, but the adjacent businesses that we've talked to have responded favorably. In addition, this is essentially where the site of the FUZE project would be. So it would be on a corner and occupy a good half block here. This is the Handy Corner site, and then you obviously have Fuzzy Tacos and Annie Mae's and the Fat Shack, and you got the Kites Draft House here as well, and I believe there's another barber shop here. So those are your adjacencies. And again, we'll continue to work with the district. The alley will remain open, not only for deliveries, but for emergency vehicles if necessary. And more than likely, we're going to need to keep some sort of path through here to where an ambulance or a fire truck or a police vehicle could get through if they needed to. But we're really excited about the opportunity to look at a pedestrian environment. It's been supported by the district and our process in the past. So this is where we will essentially start. This is a cross-section that was done with the Olson team and OHH, giving you a little bit of a frame of reference in terms of just how many feet we have across this parcel. Looks around 60, but we have a lot of different uses that we'd like to bring to this area. Laramie, a segment that is identified in the plan, went all the way from 11th, basically turned the corner at North Manhattan and wrapped right around Chipotle. So the segment that we're talking about for design and future construction with this phase would really be from 12th Street to North Manhattan. This segment has already been included in the North Manhattan project, which is underway or will be underway within the next couple weeks. But you can see here we remain fairly consistent with what is there today. We have a center lane with a center turn lane with 2 drive lanes proposed. Parking could come back into that conversation. you know, it's one of those things that obviously has it on one side today, pretty much serves the residential. It's another area we could talk about and explore options. But this is the schematic of that cross-section that was provided during that time. As I was mentioning, BHS has identified $15,000 for pre-design services. They'll actually be at the table with the city and Olson as we start to design these features. We'll be able to get some value-added input and advice from them before they go ahead and go develop that guaranteed maximum price, the GMP. They'll bring that forward again prior to us wanting to get started next summer sometime. Then, once that design is complete, BHS and Olson, much like we've done with other projects down in Aggieville, primarily with McCown, but the shift here to BHS because of the adjacencies, they'll go through that similar process and we'll bring back those prices. Olson will continue with their team with our design services contract. That is the last item to be considered for the evening. It's a contract of just over $560,000. It's for both segments. They have a very itemized list of details that they'll work through, including survey and working through the public process. Originally, I had a couple meetings. I asked for an additional one. I think they need, obviously, to meet with the district. They need to meet with staff, and they need to meet with you all before we really have a good feel for where we want to land on these things. I would envision the total project, you know, this being around 10%. So we're probably in the $5 to $6 million range to complete both of these segments of roadway. There are a few utilities we need to take a look at coming down 12th Street. We're still looking at water. There's some redundancy there. I believe Rob and Brian and Randy want to see. But we're clearly going to continue to take care of storm and any other infrastructure we need to along the way. From a financial perspective, I checked on the value of the courtyard. It's valued in 2022 by the Riley County appraiser just at $17 million. That's roughly twice what we estimated. So it'll generate over $500,000 annually in TIF if that value holds. I'm sure they've got a application they're preparing to question that potentially, but it's substantial, and we'd love to see it hold and continue to generate that kind of revenue. Like I said, originally we thought $250K, so we're looking at anywhere, you know, between 7 and 10 million for that total revenue stream just from the hotel. The FUZE Midtown, $40 million investment. You know, it's anybody's real guess where the county appraisal will come at with that structure. I looked at other office property in town today, and I would probably lean more towards the 25 million, and that's going to even be high in itself. But this is a unique product, and much like the Marriott, you're looking at a hotel that's twice the value of anything else we have in town. Even the Hilton, the newer properties, the Bluemont, this is twice the value. So it'll be interesting to see where they land on this office complex, this mixed-use project. But I estimate anywhere from 10 to 20 million in total TIF revenue. So that original estimate of 18 million, which we received for the entire district for the entire 20 years, could actually be realized by these two projects potentially. I think conservatively, we're there. Aggressively in value, I think we exceed that quite a bit. So we'll have to wait and see where the county ends up on that value. I wanted to talk a little bit before we get into the action items just about the entire vision of Aggieville. When we put that together, there was obviously a multi-million-dollar approach to the infrastructure and parking. Parking remains, and it will continue to be a topic until we're through Aggieville. A lot of what we talked about in 17 and 18 around parking was being driven by that private investment. So as the square footage for office, residential, commercial, and retail increased in Aggieville, there were corresponding parking counts that were identified. The 535 that existed in Aggieville before we started anything, we're seeing as kind of that baseline. There were options for 800, there were options for 1,200, and there were options for 1,500 additional parking spaces to be constructed. The garage itself at 450, which we just recently opened, was originally estimated to be constructed at either 600 or 800 stalls. We obviously didn't go that deep. We didn't go that high. We didn't go that expansive. It had it even incorporating Burger King, if you recall some of the site plans. We didn't invest to the 600 or 800 level. We invested to the 450. But as I mentioned, we're in for close to 30 million, and we're kind of waiting for the private sector development to come along. If the private sector development comes along, those kinds of numbers can be generated. We can start talking about additional parking. But we need some of that private development to come along. And Marriott is going to do great. This FUZE project is another opportunity for a substantial multi-million-dollar investment in Aggieville. We know the Chin property is on the horizon. We also know of other interest in Aggieville. We'd like to see that come to fruition. We'd like to see things come up out of the ground, know that value is going to be there, reanalyze where the TIF district could potentially be, and then talk about reinvesting in additional infrastructure and potentially parking. The good thing about Aggieville, in my opinion, we're going to approach you with a parking management strategy this summer. We're going to price point and structure that garage in a way we can manage it. We can create data. We can create use, and we'll be able to tell you all exactly what's happening in that garage, when it's happening, and what kind of revenue. That can lead to other opportunities. We have not been able to effectively manage parking in Aggieville or even generate revenue from parking in Aggieville. January 1, we intend to be managing that 450 stall garage. We need a good 6 months of data. We need to see who's paying. We need to see how many folks are interested in permanent stalls. We need to see on the hourly, on the daily, on the weekly, and on the monthly. We can project, but we need to have that data in front of us before we start talking about a second garage or additional parking infrastructure that the city's going to build. That's my opinion, but it's consistent with the vision. It's consistent with the process we went through with our Walker parking consultants, with the public, in determining that. We have a great web page that goes all the way back to 2014 when we started studying Aggieville 8 years ago. And every action until then. There's master plans, there are videos, there are step-by-step type of development, and this is a major one. We need some time having managed parking before we take another big step with parking. This project allows us financially to move forward. So this evening, we're recommending approval of the development agreement and the transfer agreement for the parking lot and for the design and construction manager at risk contracts for 12th Street and Laramie Street. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Jason, so on the agreement, I had talked to Ron earlier about this as well. I don't know which page 3, I guess. It said the city will be, as far as parking is concerned, we will be allotting 30 parking spots in the garage. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, the reference is our willingness to work with Back 9. They'd like to reserve some stalls in the garage we just opened. We're going to come to you all with a structure that should allow people to reserve stalls on a monthly basis. Once we open that process, we intend to work with Back 9, just like anybody else, on potentially reserving stalls. That paragraph is specifically addressing that. There are, I believe, 20 stalls that they have agreed to provide the McCullough development site, and they'd like to work with us on securing those stalls in the future. We all don't have the ability right now to do that, so we've agreed to work with them once the ability is there.
Yeah, I think that's all the questions I have for now.
I'd like to put a plug in that as you mark off the reserved spaces, that you consider the public as the highest priority for the lower level spaces, so that some of these reserved spots are a little higher up. Because the public, after all, is building the parking garage through the taxes, so it makes sense to do that.
Yeah, Adrienne Tucker, we've hired as our parking manager. I failed to introduce her at the groundbreaking, or the ribbon cutting the other morning. But she comes to us from K-State. She's got some great experience there. I'm really excited for what she's developing, and I'm excited for you all to consider it. Her experience, I think, will lend itself to a well-managed garage, and we'll bring those details to you in the
Sure,
near
I know.
future.
I'm just putting in a plug now for the public.
And of course, it goes without saying, I guess, we're gonna eventually charge for that garage, so the reserved slots are gonna be paid for. It's not a giveaway, so.
Correct.
It's not like we're taking something away from the public cash-wise. They will be paying for those slots.
Correct.
Okay. Get back to the script here. All right, this is an opportunity for public comment on what you've,
The developer is here.
Okay.
My apologies. TJ
Yeah.
Vokanskis with Back Nine, so we
Okay.
probably give him the opportunity
sure.
to speak to you all as well.
Absolutely, thank you. If you'd come forward, please. Hello?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is TJ Vilkamskis. I'm a representative of Back Nine Development. I live at 3417 Venesta Drive. I guess the first thing I'll comment on is I'm old enough to remember the days when a $40+ million private investment was a big deal in Manhattan, but we're learning differently, so that's super exciting, and I applaud everybody that made that happen. So congratulations. I'm just going to make a couple quick statements, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody may have. As we move forward with this project, one of the items that I'm most proud of is the team that we've been able to assemble to help guide us down this process. We knew it was going to take a lot of collaboration with the city and other parties, as well as the city moves forward on redeveloping certain portions of Aggieville. We knew our part was going to be a centerpiece of it. So we have formed a team, first off led by Mark Bashamp, who is with Olson & Associates, who has already been a major part of a lot of the development with the city, the civil engineering portion of it, PKMR to do our MEP design, Anderson Knight, architects, Tracy Anderson and Dan Knight. They've been around since 2002 in Manhattan. They both live here. They have a fantastic team that's here. I met Dan Knight in 2007 as a member of Leadership Manhattan. We have BHS Construction. I don't even know how long they've been here, 1965, something like that. Is that right, Patrick? Patrick is representing them as president of the company. We just wanted to get this process started off on the right foot, so we formed our team extremely early. It is a team of mainly all local representatives. So as we talk about the benefits once this project ends, I want to make sure that I focus on the benefits to all the local companies that during construction and as we get from point A to point B, how many different people of the community that this particular project will be helping and aiding in jobs that it is going to provide. So we're really excited about that. Personally, I've called Manhattan home for 40+ years. I have 4 children. And we aren't going anywhere. So we reside here. This project is important. It is not just a money grab, move on to the next community for us. It is extremely important that we see it done right. Why this project? We've done quite a bit of real estate development in Manhattan, mainly residential. As we start looking in the mirror on what we can do to help our community,
As we learned earlier with Scorpion, one of the big things that we can do is create jobs. And while I'm in real estate development, the one thing I can do in real estate development is create office space, create buildings that provide space for retail, because those in turn create jobs. And that was the whole idea when we got started on this particular project. We've had two main concerns, and we've had two main concerns as we've moved through the pre-development agreement and now onto this final development agreement. One of them is the price tag. You know, why would the city sell us this land for $1 when Jason just put up on the board it's valued at $2.3 million? I think the simple solution to that is the property tax revenue that the building will produce and the fact that we're ready to start it in a timely manner, so it can, the property tax revenue can benefit the existing TIF district that so many had the foresight in putting into play. You know, we're talking about 2 to 3 years of existence of the building where it will pay that back. I also would like to recognize a couple other successful projects that have been executed in a very similar manner. First was the Dial project, but the second thing and most recent in our minds is the community center. And by all accounts, the city was able to take a liability, move it to a private investor, and put it on the books as a property tax revenue generation tool. And I really look at that as a strong example of what this can be for Manhattan. And we're excited to move forward, and we're excited to move forward quickly so that we can best benefit the existing TIF district. And then the final thing that we've been meeting with local businesses on a regular basis, especially Aggieville businesses. Aggieville is, you know, I've told the story so many times people are tired of me hearing it, but you know, when I was in school, we didn't really have cell phones. So we went out to Aggieville, and that's where we got all of our latest news. Well, I think that it's different now, right? It's different, and so it's evolving. But we still need to appreciate and support the existing businesses that are there and the historical nature of Aggieville. So as we've talked to the Aggieville Business Association, we want to enhance what's down there. We don't want to recreate what's down there. And so those businesses that are down there, those small businesses are extremely important to us. We've met with the Aggieville Business Association at least 3 times, maybe more, just kind of trying to hear out what their concerns are and how can we help alleviate those concerns. And the number one thing that has always come up is parking. Obviously, as Jason mentioned, that is a concern for everybody. You look at our proposal, we have, you know, 28 parking spots on there, right? And we have a building that we're hoping generates 300 to 500 jobs. And so where are those people going to park? The city is not in a position right now to publicly really finance anything until, you know, this project presents itself that it's ready to go. But we are in a position as private developers to help move that along. We are in the process of acquiring land that is potentially going to be available to house parking. As a developer, we take more risk than anybody. We're spending $40+ million to create office jobs. It's really difficult to sign leases if you can't provide parking to the tenants that are going to be there. And we recognize that. You know, sometimes we lean on the public sector, but every once in a while the private sector has to be the one to lead, and then hopefully the public sector follows. And I think this is going to be an example of that. I think that we have to kind of put one foot forward and show that we're here to do what we say we're going to do, and we're investing in other pieces of property in Aggieville that is not just tied to this. We call it Midtown now, by the way. FUZE kind of went away, but that is not just tied to Midtown. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that we recognize parking is the biggest concern of the district. Dennis Cook has put together this handy little sheet for me that tells me exactly what the deficit in parking spaces is going to be based on my capacity of the building. So we're well aware of that, and the district is doing a good job of representing their businesses and their members. And we plan to move that forward sooner rather than later. We had a specific meeting in regards to a future parking lot design on Monday. So that project and that parking issue will be resolved, mainly because it has to be resolved, or we won't be able to fill the building in the time that we need to fill the building. Questions?
Commissioners?
So when we discuss parking and all of this, I would imagine, let's say you get the investors and everything going, everything signed off by December 1st, 2022. When do you see starting, I guess, the actual construction of it? Because when we think about parking, I'm thinking it's 2 or 3 years down the road, and not an immediate, the day you put in the shovel, you need 400 spaces.
No, you're 100% correct. We're looking at opening up the building in 2025. Dennis has this put together, and he gave it to me yesterday, and it's fantastic. We look to still be at a positive 142 parking spots until we open the building. Once we get to 25% capacity, assuming every person that works there drives their own car, then we're still at a 42 to the positive. Once we get to the 50% and over, that's when we start to have some issues with parking down in the district. So it's our intent to move our parking needs along. I would imagine it will be about a 12 to 18 month lag. That is just what we are kind of seeing as far as the design time and getting another garage up and running. There are so many steps that have to happen, so I even hesitate to comment on it. But just be aware that we need parking more than anybody needs parking, else we won't be able to fill the building. So.
And the other part is, Jason mentioned it's going to take us at least 6 months to collect the data of who the users are of the garage, and I think that'll provide us a window to how the garage is being used, whether it's by students, employees, or guests that are patroning in Aggieville businesses. So I think that speaks to some of the information we might be seeking as far as parking. Do you have any idea about what K-State is thinking about as far as another garage on their property, or not, another garage on K-State property or anywhere else within that district?
Yeah, I can't speak to what K-State plans to do there. I agree with everything Jason said, which is the reason why I think to get this parking garage moving, we have to push it on the private side before the city can consider anything, because they need to see the data first. I will tell you, we have met with Adrienne, and we are working with her just to make sure that we're in the loop on everything. And as we design a building, we do want it to tie into the city's monitoring structure. As far as K-State goes, I can't speak to them. I can speak to the Greater Aggieville Vision Plan, which has always had a couple of parking garages in there, and that's what we are kind of leaning on from that perspective.
Sounds good, thank you.
So just to be clear, you're looking at figuring out how to provide parking for the people that will be in this building, and that is going to be a private venture?
At this point in time, that's the only thing we can't speak to anything from a public perspective. The city just doesn't have enough data to be able to make that kind of decision. I would argue at some level, I think there needs to be public participation, because I'm not so sure you want a private parking garage down there. But right now, we're just not in a position to be able to say that we're going to do that until the community sees ground being broken, until the community has the data from the new, by the way, fantastic parking garage. I just don't think that we can probably have an intelligent conversation on that, but I do know that we need to move parking along, else we won't be able to lease out that particular building. Based on zoning and how high the building can go and cost, it didn't work on that size to put structured parking in this particular building. Even the turnaround space, as you all know better than I do, as you've worked through the existing parking garage, it just created some challenges. So we had to think outside the box at another alternative. And I think we have that, and we'll be working through that in the months to come.
Okay, because it looks like, I think net loss, about 46 slots, when we take away the current parking lot that the building will go on. It's like minus 46, the way I figure it, which isn't really a huge number considering we just finished the garage, but you're right, when that building becomes full of people, that's when that's got to be taken care of. So it's good that you're thinking about, some private investment and perhaps taking care of that.
I think that, like I said, Dennis has done a good job with this, and his team has done a good job with this. When we start construction, taking into account those lost parking spots, taking into account the lost parking spots on 12th Street and some other items, with the new garage, we're still estimating being at a positive 142 parking spaces throughout construction.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. This is an opportunity for public comment, unless the commission has further questions. Following public comment, the commission will have an opportunity to ask the city staff for more clarification and to offer comments on this item. At this time, the commission has no more comments, so if you're, I think I said earlier, nobody signed up. Each speaker must state their name and residential address for the crowd, or for the record, and for the audience members. Each speaker has a maximum of 5 minutes and must stop speaking when the timer sounds. We want to hear your comments on this item before we vote, but neither the commissioners nor the city staff will answer questions or debate an issue. Commissioners can ask questions of the speaker at the end of their comments. The best practice is to limit the questions. Let's see. Okay, we're ready for public comment. If you are interested, please step forward.
Hi, I'm Cam Ward, 1929 Blue Stem Terrace. I'm an Aggieville business owner, an Aggieville property owner, and I'm a member of the Aggieville Business Association Board of Directors. I know Mr. Vilkanskis mentioned this, but I wanted to look back in the history of the Community House Project. That was another project where the city sold a property that was not on the tax rolls, in very poor shape, needing a significant renovation. They sold it to a group of local developers for $1. Today, that building is fully occupied, fully renovated, back on the tax rolls, and it's a major benefit to the community. There's office space there that, again, is completely full. It's changed that block, it's changed that area down there, and it's created opportunity for the future. I think anyone can be nervous about a private developer receiving a piece of land or a piece of property for $1. And I have to admit, when I first heard about the project, it gave me a little concern. It didn't take much time researching it to realize that this is an incredible opportunity for the business district that my business calls home. It's an incredible opportunity for the local companies that are going to be involved in the process for planning, design, construction. And it's an incredible opportunity to have more folks work in Aggieville, patronize our businesses, put their sales tax dollars into those businesses, as well as the property tax benefit. I see that community house project as a great thing that happened in this community, and this Midtown project is going to be that on a much, much larger scale. The other thing that really struck me about this property and this project that changed my mind about it, Mr. Vilkanskis mentioned, but he's a lifetime Manhattan resident. This is someone who's willing to put his $40 million on the table to make this work. For someone that has local roots, has already invested millions of dollars into our local community to develop housing in our area, I think it speaks a lot to this project. The city could put this out to anyone, anywhere across the country or across the globe, to come to Manhattan, to make their money on a project and to funnel those dollars elsewhere. To know that we have a local developer that's willing to take a substantial risk for a huge privately funded project, I think is a really important thing to realize. We love talking about keeping money in our local economy. We love talking about local business. And when we have a local developer who's raised his family here, who's investing his capital here to make Manhattan a better place, and he's been committed to hiring local contractors, local design firm to make that project a reality, I think it speaks volumes to where we're going with this. Mr. Hilgers and the city staff have done a ton of work in recent years to make Aggieville a more inviting business district. I don't think that Aggieville anymore is just seen as a bar district like it was in the past. It's an entertainment district. We have some of our best local restaurants down there, and businesses like me offer professional services that we operate in Aggieville now. It's a thriving district, and it is one of the most important business districts to the success of this town, to our economic development. And seeing a large-scale project like this that's going to change the landscape of Aggieville is extremely encouraging. I would ask that you vote in support of this project tonight. Think about the dollars that come in. Think about an empty lot that makes no money for the city of Manhattan, turning into a $40 million project that instantly goes on the tax rolls, that instantly has benefit for everything in the district. I understand the challenge about parking. I appreciate that Back Nine is working to develop a plan to make that work, whether they have public involvement or not. And I think that when we look at Aggieville 5-6 years from now, look back on this project and see how that landscape has changed and see how it affects the economy, I think all of you are going to be very happy with the work that TJ, his company, city staff, and all of you did to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? If you'd come forward, please.
Good evening. I'm Dennis Cook. My address is 6854 Chinquapin Circle. I'm the director for the Aggieville Business Association. God, I wish I would have spoke before Cam, because he did a great job. He really expressed exactly what we've been thinking. We've had a lot of concerns. We've had a lot of questions. But to just kind of cover a little bit of what he was saying, though, but we've had many meetings with city staff, with Jason. We appreciate that. With TJ, and recently with Adrian Tucker to talk about parking and how that's going to go. And we did have yesterday, we had another meeting with TJ to really kind of put everybody's mind at ease. And I can tell you, the board is unanimous. We're totally in favor of this. We've always been in favor of this. We just had a concern. And I think that we feel very comfortable about what's going to happen next and how those concerns are going to be handled. We just wanted to make sure for the record that you knew exactly what we were thinking and what those numbers looked like. So I guess what I would just say is that Aggieville, we're local, and we want to support local. We want to support the city. And I think this is the epitome of everything that we've seen. This is a local developer. These are local businesses doing the work. This money stays here. This is going to be good for everybody. We don't see a downside to this at all, and we would encourage you to vote yes on this and get this guy going. Let's get a project down there that really means something, because everything that we've seen, this project would just add and not detract to us at all. So we would hope that you would go that way, and the board is unanimous with that feeling. Thank you.
Good evening again, Commissioners. My name is Jason Smith, President and CEO of the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce. I live at 904 Lacharno. Our organization has been engaged and supported the Aggieville vision since its adoption in 2017 and reaffirmed our support as part of our local agenda in 2022. Our leadership is very supportive of the investments necessary to make Aggieville a full-time commercial district with activity and opportunities throughout the day. This will require projects like TJ's. In addition to the additional financial assistance from the TIF that will be available for critical infrastructure improvements, Midtown will provide the opportunity to attract daytime population into Aggieville. This creates more opportunities for current merchants, as well as potentially attracting different kinds of merchants into the area as well. We support Back Nine in this initiative and encourage the Commission to support tonight's proposed items related to the development. We also have some statements on parking, but I think those have been addressed. I just want to reiterate that we're available to help the city, Dennis, ABA, TJ, whatever needs might come up in the future as it is pertains to parking. And I want to reiterate, $40 million is a lot of money, and that is a great investment. So we appreciate TJ being willing to step up and make a proposal on this project. And again, our board voted unanimously as well today to support this effort, and hope that you vote to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to come forward?
Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to speak. Ernie Bodette, retired banker, born and raised here. Used to play football on the west side of the building here. Unfortunately, the trees have grown up, so I couldn't go out there and throw it around today. I started with Kansas State Bank here, to Hutchinson, to Colorado, and Wamego, and now I'm back. Some are happy, some are not. I just want to speak up. Boy, having spent 45 years away from Manhattan, how much it's changed. I remember driving to the back door of the Pizza Hut, whipping out $3 and still going home with a large pizza. And it's so interesting to me how good a job the city of Manhattan has done in growing itself. You had to know that when you decided, and I don't really know how it came about, when you decided to make those 2 parking lots available, that whoever was going to invest was going to need more parking. And I think you need to think seriously about as a city providing the parking for what you're going to allow to be developed there. I think it's a negative for TJ to have to try to worry about that. I think it's a negative to people who are going to shop and go down to Aggieville to have to go to the city park or who knows where to park. I just think you as a city need to be responsible for providing the parking, given what you elected to do, and that was to make those 2 lots, parking lots, available. So I would just encourage you to do that and make it a project that can benefit all, including you commented, Ms. Mayor, on the public, the people that go down there. Several of my friends who are still here that went to school with me at Manhattan High, they kind of shy away from that sometimes because of the parking situation. Well, with the new parking garage, at least in the immediate future, that's no longer an issue. I drove that today, by the way. It's just a lovely parking garage. I mean, if you could make a parking garage be any better, I'd like to see it. You got the entrepreneurial, possibly entrepreneurial offices out front and along the side. It's just an excellent concept, and my congratulations to you on that. But please take every consideration of solving the parking issue as a public body, because that's what needs to happen. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to come forward? Pen went dry?
Yeah, about an hour and a half ago.
Oh, okay. It's probably. I was hoping it wasn't our pen. Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Gary Oles. I live at 3308 Frontier Circle. This is the first part that I've heard of this Fusion Midtown project, and it sounds very laudable. As I was sitting there listening to the presentation, and I don't have a dog in this hunt other than being a taxpayer, I wanted to piggyback on the last person's comments regarding parking. Sitting there listening to the presentation, and the comment was made about a private parking, and I thought to myself as I took a snapshot in my brain of an aerial shot of Aggieville, which I assume the Aggieville district is east or west of 11th, south of Bluemont, north of Laramie? No. Fremont, and east the other way, North Manhattan Avenue. As I took a snapshot of that, I was thinking about the older homes that are in that district. I have no doubt in my mind that years from now, none of those homes will exist, which also means none of the housing will exist. And there will be new housing that will replace it. And you're at the point with this project, which sounds like a great project, but I want to, like I said, address the parking issue. I would hate to see housing get demolished to provide that parking right off the bat, because you obviously lose. I assume that a parking lot for a private person is assessed at a very low rate, I assume, maybe not as commercial land. But nonetheless, I think you just have to be cautious. The last gentleman that spoke, yeah, it is kind of a public thing, not a private thing. Certainly, the only instrument you have, or the instruments you have with regards to adjacent parking would have to be the city park, the north end of the park, because there's lots of green space there, and that would probably be extremely politically unpopular, without a doubt, to use any of it. But the houses that are on the north side of Fremont, they may all end up being gone, so it's a question of how do you get them? You either buy them or you eminent domain them. I assume you can eminent domain them still, despite the state's changes, because it's public parking, but I don't know those things. So my comments are just with regards to, think about that from a big picture standpoint, because parking is probably the only thing that would be the big issue. I mean, at least from the construction standpoint. It's already congested down there. We got a lot more parking in the garage, beautiful, beautiful facility. So maybe the numbers are positive 140, or maybe they're negative 400. And if I could, bear with me for just a minute, and I'll accept a nod since we're not supposed to talk to one another. But my recollection is, in the 70s, I used to do the bump with my current wife, my only wife, at Mother's Worry. Wasn't that directly behind Chipotle, or was that the city parking lot? City parking lot. Okay, thank you, whoever said that.
I don't know. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak to the proposal? Okay. Seeing no one, I will close the public comment period. And the commission, does the commission have any further comments?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate all the questions and the concerns and the support for the project. I do have questions for city staff. There was public improvements also within this agreement. How would those both coincide with the project and the timeline? I know we have a litany of projects that we were going to do in Aggieville. Does this fast track some of those, or how does it work so that we take care of the water and the stormwater systems and everything else with it?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the contract with BHS is in coordination with the development. So Patrick will have the responsibility of addressing both the public infrastructure, sidewalks, streets, anything below grade, water, sewer, storm, anything above grade in terms of these plazas. We're going to move forward with Olson if this is approved this evening. BHS will be at the table, so they'll be very familiar with both the private and the public infrastructure. So we're going to try to time those together to where when the building is complete, the streets and the sidewalks are also complete. So we'll start that design, and I would anticipate a good year's lead on that construction before we start.
Okay, and I think this falls, it kind of coincides with the development and everything else we're doing in Aggieville right now anyway, instead of having this project come 5 years later.
Yeah. So North Manhattan will start construction, and it's about an 18-month timeline. We're going to try to move from south to north, so Laramie can start construction next summer and not really impede or be in the way of where we're at on North Manhattan.
And I had received some questions about the height of the building, and I know I asked you during our discussion a couple of days ago. It's 5 stories high, and that's comparable to the Marriott that's already there, right?
Correct, and that's the height limit from a zoning perspective.
So that's the tallest it can be. Are there other buildings at that level in the Aggieville Business District?
The garage, I believe, is also that tall.
Okay.
Yeah, 5 stories. You know, a minimum of 3. And Chad and Ben can correct me. But if you tear down something on Laramie or on Bluemont, you got to go back with a minimum of 3. So not Morrow. Morrow is basically staying the same. No restrictions or requirements there. But if you raise a building along Laramie or you raise one along Bluemont, our zoning regs have it coming back as a 3-story.
And does this have any impact on the historic district or the historic houses? that we would have to go through that process.
To my knowledge, there isn't a state or federally recognized district or property in Aggieville. Doesn't mean there's not one eligible, but there's not one designated.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Chad can correct me if I'm wrong there. Yeah.
Okay, so there isn't anyone in this. I think, you know, this, we've been lucky to discuss 3 different projects in the past few weeks with the Art and Light Museum, Scorpion, and now this project. I think we're in a very unique position for the city of Manhattan. I think the business has lots of potential. Of course, the onus falls on TJ to get that investment in by December and make sure that you have everything you need to make sure the businesses are successful. I think it would be a good investment for the Aggieville community. It is good to hear from the Aggieville business owners about how they feel about their surrounding area and the impact it's going to have. I know there's been a lot of challenges with all the other construction that's been going on, and may have lost some business, may have picked up other business. I don't know how that looks like, but we also want to keep our young our students and young business owners continuously in office spaces that are available to them and make it a vibrant community, kind of invest back into it. And I appreciate all the efforts you've gone through to try to get local developers, construction, everything that we can do to make sure it stays as Aggieville. Some of the facade, and I assume all of that's going to come our way as well, so it's not going to be an outlier of such. But I do appreciate the opportunity that you're seeking to put it back into where it's a huge investment for the city of Manhattan. And I think, Dennis, you speaking to all of us, at least I spoke with you one-on-one on several occasions. I'm glad you're having those conversations. It seems like it's been very cordial and able to work out some of the stresses. I don't think we're going to resolve everything, but I think we're on the path to having the needs met as far as parking in the next 2 to 3 years. I think that's something we're always looking at. I think the university is also seeing the same things. I would like to see what their plans are for our garages as well. I know there have been conversations in the past, and so these conversations of parking always come up regardless of the size of the business. So I think that's a concern we're always going to have and try to anticipate how to solve that problem. So thank you for everyone that spoke to the issue this evening.
So Jason, can I just, ask you a couple questions relative, because the staff position on the long-term work of the parking, the way I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea is, we get the building in place, we get the TIF moving, as we start getting revenues and we analyze the exact traffic flow patterns down there, that we would be probably happy to partner with somebody or maybe do it ourselves eventually if the revenue is there to do what the master plan originally said, which if you look at it, it had 2 garages, one at each end. And is that sort of the direction we're headed?
Yeah, and then that's the point I was trying to make earlier, 2-pronged, managing parking and creating the inventory. Managing parking was a big part of the study done by Walker. Our approach to parking in Aggieville is 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, 2 to 3 hour windows. Really no revenue unless you stayed longer than that period of time during those windows. We recognize there's opportunity to manage parking in an effective way and also potentially generate revenue to offset the cost to have that parking management. That's our goal. The other side of it is, how can we leverage additional development? Parking structures should do that. They shouldn't just exist next, by themselves. They need to have development next to them. They're a huge investment by the community, and we're looking to partner, we're looking to leverage additional commercial, residential, retail, office development in Aggieville. That plan that was put together was all about growth and providing the inventory of parking to accommodate the growth. A lot of comments really on the same parallels tonight, whether you were for or concerned. We agree, and the study pointed out every bit of that information, and it coincided with exactly everybody's concerns. We just can't afford to go build it all and then wait for the private development. We need to take steps together so those things come more naturally.
Yeah, I think that's a good plan. The other comment I want to say, I think it's a great idea to have this construction manager at risk so that, the public infrastructure and the private building is being managed under one roof, because then they're not gonna have some of these errors that happen when two different people are doing business. And I think that's gonna be great. It's gonna alleviate a whole bunch of problems, and that was an excellent plan. I think the staff did a great job on that.
Thank you, and I hope we can relieve some stress for Ryan Johnson, because he's had to referee a few screaming matches in the middle of 12th Street, so, thank you.
I'd just like to say, I'm not terribly worried about the parking issue getting improved if the success of the project depends on TJ finding some parking. And so he's a smart guy, he'll figure it out, and I just want to make sure that the commission is as helpful as possible to solve the overall picture. So as soon as there's some bright ideas available to talk about, I would like to hear about them, and so we can start making something work. And so I appreciate this. It's a great project. I love the architecture. Well done, Tracy. I think that east side grand staircase thing is going to be the coolest thing ever. And so I'm really excited about it and looking forward to it getting started here.
Just want to echo that and thank everyone and staff and everyone who's worked on the project, kind of repeating myself from the last one that was just here. The three things that I heard where people had issues was obviously one, the parking, which I think we've addressed that, and I'm real happy that the Aggieville Business Association is all in agreement with the plan that we have now, and I do think it's just a timing issue. We got to match it with the demand. The other were some folks who are in real estate and development that were saying, well, you're giving this away for free. I compete with them. I had to pay for my property, and they don't have to. And I'm not building yet because I don't see the demand or something to that effect. I just think it's too significant of a project, and I think in the long run, everyone's going to benefit from this development that's down there. The other negative that I heard wasn't people who had skin in the game like those people with real estate or development, but ones that really kind of wondered whether we would fill it up and was just concerned with the project being a success. I think we just had Scorpion that we talked about earlier today, and Bath is finishing. I think we have the demand to fill it up. And one of the things I said when I ran was I was willing to take risks on economic development projects. And frankly, this one, the risk is mostly with you, the developer, that's there. And I think it's a great project and really looking forward to it.
I have questioned selling the parking lot for $1. I think that it's our responsibility to be stewards of public resources. And once they're gone, for the public, they're gone. And the commission has supported this project, and I plan to support it too. I cast my vote earlier, but this is a big project, $40 million project, and I want it to succeed, and it's a good-looking project and it takes a while to turn a whole area of town around, and I want to be sure that we respect the history, but this is an empty parking lot, so there's not much discussion there. So I'm going to support the project, and I appreciate especially the commitment to local involvement, local companies, and the ideas from local people. And that seems really important to me, that we not just have out-of-town or chains in our commercial areas. So it's a good thing, and I think this will be a good project. All right. Having had making all those comments, are there any other questions from the commission before we move forward? Okay, is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make the motion that we approve the development agreement and real estate transfer agreement with Back 9 Development for the redevelopment of the city parking lot, AG 2101, approve the 12th Street and Laramie Street AG 2202, design contract with Olson of Manhattan, Kansas, in the amount of $567,776, and approve the construction manager at risk contract with BHS Construction of Manhattan, Kansas, for the 12th Street and Laramie Street construction, AG 2202.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this project. Brenda Wolf, City Clerk, will you call the roll?
Commissioner Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Mayor Morse,
Yes.
Commissioner Hattasol.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for coming this evening. I appreciate your comments. Pardon?
Those half of them.
Oh, okay. The other half taking a break. Tired of sitting.
Anybody down there want a Dr. Pepper? Go on. I don't use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a conservative guy. I can't make it.
All right. Okay. All right. As the crowd clears. I'll wait just a second. Because I think the noise will go out in the hall, and then we can close the door. And some of them may come back in. All right. The next item on the agenda is item C, to consider the first reading of an ordinance amending Americare PUD. And I think there you go. Chad Bunger, are you Assistant Director of Community Development? Okay.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Commission. I'm Chad Bunger, Assistant Director for Community Development. Going to keep the good times rolling with development discussion. This one will be for Americare off of Miller Parkway and Amherst Avenue, generally located here in the southeast corner of the community. This little over 9.5 acre tract outlined in the red here. This development was approved in 2018 for assisted living and independent living for Manhattan. Recently, last year, a significant limitation to the development in the form of a Kansas gas easement was released, allowing for the opportunity to have the site realize more opportunity, or excuse me, have more opportunity for development. So this is the current plan. The north side is the assisted living. We will not be discussing about that portion, but it's two large facilities or buildings there. We'll focus our attention on the south side and the utility easement that's been vacated by Kansas Gas and gives the opportunity to the developer is this area highlighted, almost a full acre in space that the property owner would like to reorganize the site and better use it. So what we have this evening is discussion to reorganize the site here. Ultimately, it would eliminate one building, one of the multiplex buildings, and in its place or in addition to that, a two-story clubhouse here for the residents, and then a 12-unit apartment building for independent living, and then slightly reorganizing the site with the duplex, threeplexes, and a fourplex. So it's a fairly straightforward development. All told, I believe if I counted right, we're looking at a combined of 28 dwelling units, where originally I believe it was 18 in this space of the development. So it is increasing the density, but it's well within the bounds and plenty of space, landscaping space. It's a walkable development, and so staff has recommended it. This item was heard by the the planning board on April 4th, and they've recommended to you approval of it as well with 3 conditions of approval, largely to make sure that the development occurs as proposed, as you see here. Make sure I'm not missing any slides. This would be some images of the clubhouse and the apartment building, and kind of a side-by-side comparison. The left side is the current configuration, and over here on the right is what the new layout would be. So with that, carrying forward that recommendation from the planning board to you all, staff's recommended approval, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, I need to make a statement. That is that prior to proceeding with the item, each member of the governing body who has engaged in ex parte communication with any individual, either in favor of or against the matter being considered, must state that the communication occurred and indicate that even in light of having engaged in the communication, if you are able to fairly, objectively, and impartially consider the measure based upon the evidence provided on the record, and that's in this meeting. So at this point, does the commission have any further questions of Mr. Bunger?
Great, thank you.
This is a major modification, and that's what, from the planning boards, after they've approved it, and that's why it's coming back to us, because of the changes. Okay. Is the applicant here, and hello, and do you wish to speak to us?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Neil Slattery. I'm a staff engineer for Americare Senior Living. Americare Senior Living is the developer on this project. As staff has indicated, we came before you in 2018 for the rezoning and so forth. And the final development plan was originally approved in 2020. At that time, we had 80 units total for the overall campus, 18 on the cottage phase, and we originally approached Kansas Gas in 2018 while we had it under contract. At that time, they weren't interested. We were a year into construction. We started in 2020. We've completed most of the mass grading, the retaining walls, most of the public infrastructure, and our plan was to start 2 of the big buildings last fall. COVID changes schedules. But so when Kansas Gas contacted us about relocating that main, it opened up some other options. Mm-hmm. And as Chad had shown you the proposed building, originally that clubhouse is 3,500 square feet. This one is going to be about 14 on the bottom floor, about 9,400 on the top. It'll have kitchens, it'll have dining rooms, it'll have lounges, a theater. And so we're able to bring a product to Manhattan, something more substantial than what we originally came with. And it also offers another type of product with the apartment-style units. And if everything goes well, we go back to redesign, do enough redesign that's city satisfied, and we start this project later this summer. And if there's any other questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you for your willingness to work with the city staff on these changes. I know that they're looking at our standards and code, but your willingness to change is important too. And happily, Kansas Gas changed their mind, and yes, you're able to redesign. So, are there any questions of the applicant from the commission? Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate it, Mr. Slattery. And now I'd like to open the public comment. Well, unless there are no commissioner comments, so I'd like to, it's a public hearing. So I'd like to open the public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak to this proposal? Gary.
Back up. Do I need to reintroduce myself?
Probably, yes.
Gary Olds, 3308 Frontier Circle, Manhattan. Sounds like a very good project, first I've heard of it. But the question comes into my mind. As everyone in this room probably knows, 45% of all parcels in Riley County are tax exempt. So the question in my mind is, that probably won't get answered, but maybe it will at some point by publicly, is does this project qualify as does Meadowlark Hills and perhaps other assisted living projects in the community that are eligible and may likely achieve a tax exempt status for property taxes is what I'm referring to. I just asked that question because if that is the case, and it's probably way too late now, so I don't have an objection, wouldn't want you to go backwards, but it would be nice on these projects to have some type of payment in lieu of taxes as you do with public housing, if that's all possible in the future.
Thank you. We appreciate your comments. Okay. Does the commission, with no one else coming forward, I'll close the public hearing. Commission comments, please.
I don't have any objections to this. I think it's much needed in our community. This is a sector we keep seeing that's more and more of our population. So I'm glad you were able to work with the Manhattan Urban Planning Board and now coming to us. I think they approved it unanimously, I believe. So I don't see, I'm in support of the changes.
It seems to make sense. I mean, basically, it's, you had an easement running down the middle, which was making it difficult, and by removing it, it looks a lot better. It's a better project, so it's pretty simple.
I know that our community has needs for our seniors and independent living, nursing home, any of those. And I know the new model is 12 units per building, seems to be. And I also support it because our Urban Area Planning Board supported it. So it seems like something we wouldn't have any big problem with because all of the ducks are in a row. You've worked hard to do that, so thank you. Okay. I already did that. Please do.
Mayor, I move that we find that the proposed amendment meets the review criteria of subsection 26-9E-70, major modification, and approve first reading of an ordinance amending ordinance number 7377 and the final development plan of the assisted living by Americare PUD.
Second.
I think that we have the motion and a second. Do we need the commissioners to declare any ex parte communication? Katie's saying no. Okay. Thank you. Okay. We have a motion and a second. City Clerk Brenda Wolf, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Butler?
Yes.
Commissioner Motta?
Yes.
Mayor Morse?
Yes.
Commissioner Hattasol?
Yes?
Commissioner Reddy? Yes. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much, everyone. Item D is to consider the first reading of an ordinance implementing the updated classification and compensation system as recommended by the AGH Consulting Group. Jason Hilgers. Deputy City Manager.
I don't know, I didn't see it on there. We should have a participant by Zoom, and I'm
Okay.
not seeing them.
Hope he's not charging us by the hour.
We would have put them first.
She might be watching stream, so let's just share it. Maybe if she gets on, she can see it. Or maybe she's watching it. Thank you, Kristen. Welcome, Carrie. I see you're there, and we'll just move right into the presentation. So last week, we received a presentation from AGH on a pay study, a total reward study for city employees. We look at it as setting the direction for the future of the organization. Critical path really to recruit and retain employees. We as an organization have been talking about this for a good 4 years, our organizational excellence and even our strategic plan process brought pay to the front of the discussion. As I mentioned last time, we have a total payroll within the city of $26.6 million. 21.6 of that is in the general fund. That is where the bulk of the department's payroll, personnel line items are located. We obviously have then smaller percentages in storm, water, and wastewater. That $2.1 million in annual adjustments that was a recommendation coming out of the pay study also needed to add in taxes, unemployment, retirement, withholdings per year. So we're looking at a total impact of $2.5 million annually, or just over $1.26 million for that half year, which we recommended starting here in 22. It's overall less than a 10% increase, and when we're looking at what others are considering in the past and what the city has received, this is truly trying to bring us up to speed, snap us back to a reality, to a comparable, competitive situation. We're not looking to increase the pay for raises. We're not looking to go beyond where our comparable cities are. In the general fund and in the utility fund, these are slightly less than 10% increases. Some of you are very aware of what's already been proposed for the 23 budget from other entities. It's a similar figure. Our figure is more based on where we are in the marketplace. This doesn't have anything to do with trying to keep up with inflation. It doesn't have anything to do with us trying to, compensate our employees next year based on some sort of merit pool. This is about getting our people to where they need to be. For the last 4 years, we haven't had a tremendous amount of movement. And even at 2.5% each year, you reach this 10% figure very quickly. And it's an effort and an energy to try to get us back to where we need to be. We have a very stable general fund today. We are fortunate to have an $8.5 million cash balance. It's actually in excess of that. But our operation for the past 4 or 5 years has been about monitoring our monthly revenues with our monthly expenses. I will show you a chart later that highlights property taxes have been flat in this fund supporting our people for the last 4 years. Flat. They have not increased. We actually decreased the mill levy to generate the same amount of money for the last 4 years. Show me another governmental entity who operates on property taxes doing that in this community. We have 4 years of history, and we will show you. We obviously have COVID money, we have ARPA, we have a tremendous amount of buying power and financing power right now. We need multiple things in our operation. Paying our people is our number one priority. As I mentioned, we don't anticipate mill levy increases this year. We don't anticipate mill levy increases next year. We showed you a 3-year plan to fund this with no mill levy. That ordinance is on the agenda this evening. It takes 2 readings. We're looking for that mid-year adjustment, as I mentioned, in 2022. We will be talking with you about a 23 budget approach, just like everybody else. But I come back to, it's a balance between revenues and expenses. We cannot outpace those. We did for several years, and we ran ourselves into quite a circumstance. It took us taking your feedback and going into this organization and figuring it out. That's exactly what we've done, and that's exactly what we'll continue to do. The action item this evening is a salary ordinance. It is not about setting pay for 300-plus people in this organization. There are pay grades, 6 through 26 in that salary ordinance. They identify minimums, they identify maximums for each pay grade. These are based on comparable communities, comparable job descriptions to what we see in the marketplace today. Section 2 is the same as it has been in the past. It needs to be pay for the municipal judge, the public defender, and temporary and seasonal staff. Sections 3 through 13, also very similar to what we've had in the salary ordinance before. It addresses a number of topics that have to do with pay. They've been there before. We're highlighting them here tonight to show you they're in there again, and it is really anything and everything addressing pay. It even addresses your pay, it addresses allowances, it addresses management approach, fire department, cost of living, work performance, just any number of events surrounding pay. The ordinance, as I mentioned, doesn't address employees. It provides that framework for administration to evaluate, place within grade, and generate equity within the organization. We are not in an equitable position today, internally, and we are not in a competitive position externally. That is a management view of how 400 people sit within this organization that we get to work with every day in 8 departments and several divisions, delivering services to this community. We are not equitable. The adjustments we've made, we've had to make. People have left. People would not come on unless we made the adjustment. We had to make the adjustment. We are finding ourselves externally not in a competitive position, hence why we hired the pay study to be done. We have areas, as I mentioned, that are much closer to a competitive wage. And it's due to that turnover, and we've had to make those necessary adjustments to recruit and retain. This pay study was an effort to bring information to light across the board about where these inequities are and what we need to do to address them. It's about snapping back to where we need to be, and it's cross-organization. We have choices, and we need to make them on the approach to pay. Do we want to be competitive? Do we want to retain our investments, our sunk costs in each employee that we have trained? People who know how to do their jobs. People who can bring you projects like Project Life, Art and Light Museum, and the FUZE. These are talented people who have experience and the know-how and the knowledge to bring these projects to fruition. One of the core functions of the city manager for the commission, really, that is the position they hire. One of the main things that city manager and that city manager group does is evaluate the workforce. There's a tremendous amount of trust and integrity and knowledge and experience, ability, communication, relationships, and team building in our office. Ron has 22 years. I have 22 years in the office with the organization. Ron has 40 with the organization. There's an evaluation that has been going on. The information is about daily operations. We have to have our people in place. When you talk about city budgets and you talk about expenses, and you talk about revenues, it is about our team. It is about the people in this organization delivering those services, top to bottom. They're all vital, they're all critical, and they're all essential to delivering those services to this community in an efficient and effective manner. I've witnessed it be ineffective. I've witnessed it be inefficient. It is a stress on this entire organization when it is. We have examples. You're aware of them. When people don't perform, and we have to address these things. Pay is only one piece of this. To remain competitive, the culture of this organization, the effectiveness of it, the efficiency of it, if I were interviewing here, I'd be asking those questions. I'd want to know how it's been operating. I would want to know what kind of financial health do we have as an organization? How are we approaching tough times? All those things make a difference. We don't make these recommendations lightly. We've been part of pay studies in the past. We know it's difficult. It is very rare for any elected official or any member of the public to support paying a public official. It's extremely rare. We're the most transparent and open group this community has available to it. We show you everything, and then some. You've all been part of boards where you've asked for additional information and didn't get it. You ask for additional information, you get it, and then some. We're extremely responsive. We have delayed and denied several pay adjustments over the last few years due to our community revenues and our economic times. Jared McKee pointed it out to this group multiple times. A 5% increase is $1 million a year. That's taking into account both COLA and some sort of step or merit. When we look at other organizations, even locally, 5% is common, if not a staple, in how people are treated annually. And we have struggled to come up with this $1 million in the past few years. We're seeking that authority through this ordinance to adjust pay. We have the available revenues. We're seeking that trust in management to preserve these investments in the community and the organization we've already made in our existing personnel. We need this pay grade structure that allows us to recruit and retain at a high level, at an affordable rate. And I add that affordable rate because my kudos to Ron Fear and the time he has spent here. There is no one who scrutinizes the use of the public taxpayer dollar more than Ron. It is to his credit. He is constantly challenging us to make sure what we're doing is appropriate. He works for the 5 of you. He is always accommodating any request, any information. It is to your benefit to have someone like Ron in the place he is and the scrutiny he gives this organization. We have reached a point we need to address pay. General fund, 6.5 mils. It's where we started in 2018, it's where we are today. Valuation of the mill is right next to the mill levy. That $3.7 million is $3.9 million this year. We have been at $3.946 million for the last 3 years, which means we've either eaten in to reserves or reduced operations in order to even pay our people a 2% COLA, not in 2021. We had no adjustments in 2021. But in 2020 and 2022, we made do. We figured it out. We watched our revenues. We watched our expenses. We managed the tax dollar. It is flat. It has been flat. It will remain flat. We can manage this. I don't think really last time we had a whole lot of question of that. And I appreciate that confidence. But we do need the trust that we're going to put these dollars and these future salary adjustments into the people that provide the services appropriately. I'm in a frame of mind to continue to question how we do things. We need to continue to do that. We've had a lot of turnover in a lot of departments. It's allowed us to do that. We need to continue to do that with no property tax increase. We rely on other revenues, which is 84% of your entire general fund. We want to remain competitive. We've offered a plan to get there. We want to deliver that high level of service. Be happy to answer any questions.
Your last slide, no, the one you just had up there. And I know you want to direct it towards this one fund, but funds are kind of fungible and you can move, things around, and what the people in the community care about is bottom line, what their bill is when they get it. So when you say you will not raise property taxes to make this adjustment, I mean, a lot of people may read that as we're not going to have a property tax increase, and I doubt that's true. Because even if we don't have a mill levy increase, we'll have a property tax increase. It's we're not going to meet that, what do they call that, the net zero?
Revenue neutral.
Revenue neutral number, which would be a no property tax increase.
The city is 11.5% of your tax bill. That's what the city operates on. That's 18 mills. You got 6 mills coming in, 6.5 mills coming in the general fund. You got 5 mills coming into the bond and interest. You got the remaining going into the employee benefit fund. That's where
And
it
then the
goes.
city budget includes the police department and the library.
It does, not under our control. That's really your all's purview,
Yeah,
based on
you to
state
remember that.
statute and where the budget comes. That request does, city funds it through its 51 mills, but 18 of those mills, 11.5% of your total tax bill, is what we operate under. I can't go manage our CPD. I can work with Ron and all the department heads and manage what we do. And we've done that.
Yeah. I know when I first joined the commission again and in our retreat, because I knew this study was coming, mentioned how I saw it, how it needed to be a phased-in approach, that we couldn't bite the apple all at once, and even probably needed to look at some of the open positions and how we phase them in. I think some of the numbers that the community are looking at as well is, what are the magnitude of some of the increases? And if you take the initial increase that you want this year and add in what's recommended in there is 8.5% next year, not even compounding it for what the people make, it's 84 people at 3,300, 97 at 7,600, 53 at 15,000, 12 at 27,000, and 3 at 56,000. If you take the numbers and add in just what is someone making this year versus what they'll make by the end of next year, if you're looking at that top 15, you're averaging out to about a 41,500 increase. The top 3 at about 68,006. The median household income in Manhattan's 51,000. And, that's where I, get to have some heartburn, and I think the community does, on what they're seeing of the magnitude of some of the stuff that we're talking about here. Which again leads me into a phased-in approach as we reach, the higher ends of these. Also, we add in now the benefits and everything. We're no longer at 2.1, we're at 2.5. You take in the compound factor, and again, don't look at the base, just of the increase, and you add another 215, and then if you fill the open positions, another 147, because they're in there. So you're 223 compared to 220. Impact is close to about $3 million. And I appreciate everything that everyone does, but I think we need to look at these numbers really hard. And I'm still kind of where I was when I was running and when I first came on the commission. And I have a hard time when some of these are going to be over the median income and a lot of others just extremely close to what that number is. And if commissioners want to see any of the calculations, you can.
Yeah, Jason, good presentation. We talked earlier in the week about a couple of these, but, and I get the point. What staff is saying is, we want to change the structure, at the same time implement. And I guess my approach is, you make a good case for, okay, the structure needs to be changed. Okay, that's okay. The problem is the implementation. And that's what's got everybody excited. I got a raft of emails saying, just vote no on this thing. And it has to do with the implementation. And I think the majority of the folks out there would say, when we say targeted on implementation, you've got this window the city manager can use, but then you've got to look and say, okay, who are we actually losing? And most people have no problem with about the first 100 or so people on this list. That's the lower end folks that we can't retain, and go ahead and pay them instantly as suggested. It's the upper end that everybody has got heartburn about, $30,000 raise in 1 year. People just have said that's insanity. Now, that doesn't mean that some of that's not valid, and I won't use any names, but I personally feel that our fire chief is underpaid. And there needs to be a structure to move that up, but I don't think we ought to do it in 1 year. It's got to be eased up. And so, what I'd like to see is, the option to, we put the structure in place, but then the city manager's got to provide an implementation that addresses, the problem between the lower end and of course, management. And I know, you're in the management side, and we're asking you to bite the bullet, to take your raise over 3, 4, 5 years. And I provided some information to the manager, last week and this week, on that topic. But that's basically where I'm at. And I think I said that when we voted for the pay study, because people were pressuring me and said, well, if you vote for the pay study, then therefore you have to vote to implement it. And as you recall, I said at that time, that's not the case. I want to see the study, and I want to analyze it, and I'm still of the position that we need to target it, and that the big giant leaps forward of $30,000 for one person needs to be phased in over a couple of years. And I do trust the staff to be able to keep the mill levy flat. As John says, that doesn't mean revenue neutral. And there's one other thing in the presentation that, raises my eyebrows a little bit. It talks about utility funds. Now, we're not planning on raising water rates to pay for any of this, are we?
You've got a percentage of people that are already paid out of the utility fund.
Right.
So that analysis needs to happen.
But does that indirectly mean we might raise water rates to pay for those?
I think that analysis will be done this summer and part of the '23 budget. I don't think anything needs to be done in the interim, but you do need to look at 2023, not only with the salaries, but with the CIP, with how the weather impacted water usage up until that point. So that full analysis needs to be done.
Okay, because I've always been concerned about, how we do with water funds, because it seems like we may be doing a little hidden tax there. We keep pirated money out of that and raising all the water rates, and people are looking at that and saying, wait a minute, you're not raising the mill, but I'm getting killed on my water bill.
And
the other side of the coin is, I want to give a shout out to the water department and all those guys that work there, because we got great water in the city, and that's a big plus, I saw a report in Topeka a couple weeks ago. They said, your water's still good even though it's brown. Can you imagine if that would happen here in the city of Manhattan? The outcry, So a shout out to all those guys. They do an excellent job.
So on that slide there, does that mean every water plant employee is at $2,096,000, or is that just 50% of the wages? Or
no, that's the total payroll
for the water,
those.
wastewater department?
Yeah, now that's not just the facility. There's obviously people out in the field working on those things funded by
Anybody
those.
affiliated with those two
Correct.
things? Okay, so that's not just like part of it, it's the whole thing?
Correct.
Okay. Well, I just think, I agree that we've got to do something. We've got to implement parts of it, most of it. But, yeah, I would not want to be the department head that gets a $30,000 or $40,000 raise in 1 year and then have to go hang out with my team knowing that they got a $40,000 raise. So that's madness. So I wouldn't put that onto somebody, especially since the salaries will come out in the paper at some point in the future. So, yeah, we're going to have to, and I'll leave it up to the city manager. That's why he gets paid, not as much as he should be getting paid, but to figure out where and how to implement most of it, especially to keep the key people that are underpaid versus the person who just left to take a job somewhere else is getting paid. So I appreciate that. We're going to have to keep that, but yeah, some of the higher end ones, they're just going to, and even if we implement it over 3 or something years, by then they'll be a little bit behind their peers because of inflation and cost of living raises that other people might have got. But it's just a matter of, yeah, I've gotten more communications over the pay thing than I have in the last 2 years of anything that we talked about. And so it's obviously something that, we got to keep our good key people, and some of the key people are in higher level administration. And so I would leave that up to the city manager to figure that out. But I talked a little bit about maybe if it's a $2.5 million hit annually, I don't know if we could, like say, which means 1.2 million for implementing it in July, if we could sort of set a target number for this year of a certain amount, $1 million or something. Okay, here's $1 million, go implement something, and then next year, here's 2 million change or something. And I don't know if that's an option based on how much these raises add up to, but we gotta somehow stagger or stair step these the highest things, just because we can't.
Yeah, your $1 million. I mean, when you look at the top 1%, 4%, those added together, 450,000 of the 2.5. I mean, of the 2.1. I mean, your bulk is right there in the middle.
Yeah.
It's that.
And I'm not expecting we're going to get by with $500,000 worth of raises or something, but as opposed to the full, yearly of 2.5, if we could scale that back $300,000 or $400,000 over the period of a year, and then add that, and then over a period of time spread that out over the next few years. I don't know. I would like us to keep moving this thing forward because I understand it's holding up some of the 2023 budget prep, but I would like to give Ron a couple of weeks here to explain how he can stair-step this thing in so it's not such a huge bite and not such a potential problem for some of the people who are going to get a big raise, because somehow their people will find out that their boss just got a big raise, and so somehow they will.
Yeah, and I appreciate those comments. It's on the flip side too. So the compression issues are real. You've got 4 people in MFD admin in the top 15. You've got captains that are bumping them right now in pay. So, I appreciate the comment, but I actually think some of the people are almost like their heads are about to hit the ceiling, and they are a few positions below the admin. So I understand where you're coming from. I think Ron can put that together if that's the desire of the commission. But you do have some supervisors who are bumping up against their department head. And it does speak. They're large. Why are they large? We haven't kept up with the pay. That's why they're large. It's not large because they're special. They're large because we haven't kept up. And when you go to other communities and you ask the person to come work for you who has a similar experience, a similar tenure, similar knowledge, we're telling you what they're paying them. And when we look in the mirror and we look at what we're paying those people, it is substantial, which could easily draw those people out of town. I understand the reaction, but it is a matter of not implementing in 04 or 06. It is a matter of not implementing in 2014. And it's a matter of this organization from the middle down saying, we can't wait. We have to adjust. And we have brought those salaries up in order to recruit and retain. Well, we didn't on the upper half. We waited. We waited years. That's why they're so substantial.
I would just say that it seems to me that we have an obligation to compensate our employees, and that we undertook this study to see what the market rate was, and we're losing good employees. Had an interesting conversation with a man that works in the sewers, and he talked about how he could make $2 more an hour at one of the drive-up restaurants, and you just, COVID has changed, as far as I'm concerned. This is magnified by COVID and the things that are happening in our employment world, where nobody I know says they have enough employees. They are all looking for employees. And you have talked, and you and Ron have talked in the past about the vacancy rates. And you no more than hire 2 employees when, oops, you lost 2 at the same time, so you can never catch up. And that means your employees are really pushing and stressing to constantly cover for the employees that are not there for one reason or another. We used to do it just because they were on vacation or because they were sick. Now it seems like a constant state of having to compensate for others. So I think it seems to me that it's warranted, and we have the benefit of this study. And I know some of the salaries seem high at the top end, and I'm not, I really want to make sure that we keep our employees. And so we heard about, I think it was wastewater plant operator 3 or something, who got an offer from Kansas City and for more money than his supervisor made.
Yep.
And so when we hear stories like that, we have to rethink the old, where you just don't give a raise and everybody has to bite the bullet, and we've got to pull through this together, because the landscape really has changed in my mind.
Yeah, I do appreciate the pay study. I think every organization is going through this right now. It's not just the city of Manhattan. Every organization is having to reevaluate how they compensate their staff, how they hire, how they recruit. And most of it does come down to what they're paying them. And I've seen many organizations in our community having to raise their salaries. Manhattan has typically been a low-wage community, and we can interpret that however we want, but that's typically why people didn't stay. K-State students, we would want to always have them stay. They never stayed, not because they didn't love Manhattan, but there wasn't a job that was paying enough for them to stay. And I think, when I think about the Art and Light Museum coming, and then the, FUZE, Midtown, Middletown, whatever they want to be called, is coming, another $40 million. And then you have Scorpion. All of them were speaking about our staff. All of them are talking about public work. They're talking about administration and about the number of hours they put in. And we don't see that. That's the unsexy stuff that we don't see. Our attorney's office, how many, legal documents they have to draft. So I think if we continue to just go at this pace, people are moving here because of what we're doing, the services we are providing, the staff they are working with. And if we lose the staff and we can't recruit some others back, if we hire somebody else in Ron's position, they're not going to come with what we pay for Ron right now. I can guarantee you that right now. The superintendent right now at USD 383 gets paid probably more than Ron. So there's a lot of administrators in our community that definitely get paid a lot more. There was a time when we had Karen Davis, and I don't remember our Human Resources Director, Kathy Harms. They were a one-woman show, and they were one-man shows here. And now when we hire Tammy, or when we hire Eric, and now we have Stephanie, they have to hire a lot more people under them because the work is so much more complex, and there's so much more demand under each of them. So we see that right in front of us, and I think we don't appreciate it enough. And it's taking a toll even on their families. I think, we've heard a few of them speak to it last time. I think going with the pay study is critical at this time. We've given you the charge of coming up with a plan where we don't raise the mill levy, and you provided that plan. And I think the responsibility falls on us on what that means. You've given us the suggestion, this isn't going to increase your mill levy for, for a little while. We have this kind of money in the reserves. And as far as property taxes going up, they're going to go up even if we do nothing. Property valuations are going up because businesses are coming here. USD 383 passed a huge bond. A great majority of property taxes go to USD 383. So there's all of these other critical factors that are happening around us. I believe the community believes in city services. And in order to provide them at the level we're providing them, it's our responsibility to make sure our staff is taken care of. And I am in favor of this study and whatever modifications we need to make sure we are treating our staff the way they need to be treated and hire good quality staff as well. Otherwise, you won't get the strength of staff that we have right now. You'll get the weakest links just to fill in positions. And that's a pain and that's a waste of money. So I think in order to recruit those folks, we need to be doing our due diligence in compensating them.
The commissioners have had an opportunity to make comments. At this point, I'd like to open the public comment period. Are there members in the audience that wish to speak to this?
Hi,
Welcome.
Monica McFarling, 213 Parker Drive. I actually was a city intern twice, and both times in the HR department. I learned a lot about the city and how they compared to other Big 12 areas. I did a study actually on the healthcare and how they compared and know how well that we provide those costs to our employees. But I also was part of a satisfaction survey from employees, and out of the top 10 areas of dissatisfaction, half of them had to do with pay and with the performance evaluation system. It's been an issue for a long time. There has been a lot of turnover in the city. One of the very first things that we always explained when we gave whether it be the new employee orientations or explaining, hiring guidelines and laws, was talking about the importance of your employees. That the core of this city is based upon its services from who is here. And the staff, as you heard many times tonight in other commission comments, but all these projects that are coming to the city are done through your staff. And K-State is facing a lot of the same problems with salary compression. I serve on the USS Senate, and I'm the vice president, the president-elect going in. I sit on the budget review panel board. I sit on the president's advisory council. So I hear a lot of different discussions about what's going on in their hiring issues. They're also trying to find ways to deal with their staff shortages. It's just terrible how many shortages there are across the university. You are one of the major employers in this city. If it's not K-State, people look here. You have lost a massive amount of talent to other communities because of the fact that the pay has not kept up. I know that you say you're not going to have a whole lot of support to explain why 3 employees got $30,000. And maybe it needs to be, gradually put in. Another 12 on the slide when you're talking about those. 15 employees should not stop what needs to happen for the rest of the 400 and something employees that you have. That's my comments.
I hope you can read my name and address, but I'm Stacy Kohlmeyer. I live at 3446 Venesta Drive. I've been in Manhattan for almost 38 years now. Hard to believe that. But my work day, I've been a manager in businesses for those 38 years. And I just want to commend, the commissioners and the staff for taking this important step of doing a comprehensive analysis like this. Boy, you know, as leadership for an organization, there's nothing that you can do that's more important than figuring out where you need to be to keep the talent that you need, whether you're running a city, like the city of Manhattan, or whether you're running any kind of business, and I know you've been in business for a long time too, Commissioner Mata. So I just want to, again, commend you for doing that, and while I can't speak to any of the specifics, I haven't read the analysis, this is a market analysis, and so I would be careful, just from a business perspective of what I have to tell myself all the time, of second-guessing the experts that have done the work in that field. And so if they point out inequities between our folks here and other places that we need to fill, then, you know, while it may seem painful, it's probably because there is an inequity, and I'm saying we in general, because I love this community, and I know all of you do too. You know, we're in a potential problem of losing some of the great people that we have. And I'm talking about this at all different levels of the community, and the city staff. So again, I can't speak to them, but I feel very passionate about this area. I've just gone through compensation work at where I work right now. We just finished it up. And you know, it's always hard to talk about money. Doesn't matter where you are, it's always hard to talk money, and especially when you're in the public domain. But we care about Manhattan, and you've just, like everybody said, look at the great agenda that was on here tonight, and look how many people have been involved in the city and outside of the city to make this all come together. That's skill and talent that all of us need to keep in all of our businesses, and the city should work to keep that, and I'm so glad that you are. So thank you very much for doing that.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak?
Hi, my name's John Ball. I live at 3107 Harahay Ridge, and I've come here tonight to talk about this ordinance and what has been proposed. I would just ask the city commissioners to think carefully as they add almost $3 million. And when you add everything together, it's almost $3 million additional bill to the citizens of Manhattan. When you look at the study, I would just caution you to be cognizant. I think it's based on some false assumptions. I have seen consultants that the city has hired come in and tell the city commission things that have turned out to be absolutely wrong. But because they were the consultants, the city commission followed what they want to do. And I can go all the way back to the Discovery Center paying for itself, which it has not. It is not the consultants that end up liable for these mistakes. It's the city commission and the citizens of Manhattan that end up paying for this bad information we make decisions on. Now, when you start looking at the details of the pay increases, when you start talking, and as I understand, our city employees get pay increases based on time, plus they get cost of living increases. In 2023, I believe we're projecting an 8.5% increase in salaries on top of also the pay adjustments. 8.5% increase is a pretty good increase. I would be surprised anybody in this room, or at least very few, get 8.5% cost of living on top of their incremental pay increases. That is not to say that we don't need a hard look at the salaries from the mid-range going down. That's, I think, where you have the biggest challenges. I would tell you, I've been an executive manager for almost a quarter of a century. I've run from 55 employees to 550 employees. I've never had to ask for a pay study to be done, because if I can't find a qualified person for that job at that salary, that's probably a bad salary, so we probably need to raise that. If I have turnover, because I'm losing qualified people to other jobs, that's a pretty good indicator that the salary's not correct. So I would look at the positions you have in the city, and now, I don't watch every position all the time, but I'm not sure that we're losing a lot of our more senior people at the upper pay grades. I do know that we're losing a lot of people at the mid and lower pay grades. And so I would just suggest that you target the pay increases, but also implement them over a period of time. I also heard that the mill levy hasn't increased. I will tell you, as a citizen here, I've watched the mill levy increase over the last 14 years, and then on top of that, you have the assessments. So if you have a windfall of money, perhaps you might look at lowering the mill levy so that we have neutral revenue. That's one way to kind of return the money back to the citizens of Manhattan. Because right now we're looking at increased assessments, and even with the flat mill levy, we're paying more. And it really hurts the middle to low income people. But thank you for letting me talk, and you have a nice evening.
Thank you, John. Does anyone else wish to come forward?
As they say, third time is charm. Gary Oles, 3308 Frontier Circle. Wow, what a difficult subject to deal with. Just as a clarification, I don't know if I can get an answer or not, but what I heard tonight was that of the property taxes that are collected from the citizens, strictly property taxes, 11.5% of that money goes to salaries. That's what I heard. City operations, sorry. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. So I just want to take this down from a macro level to a micro level as best as I can. I pulled out my old tax statements, and I would encourage any of the people who are watching, get your old tax statements out and look at the details on the bottom. From 2017 to 2019, the city collected $1.2 million more in revenue, not dealing with the mill levy. I'll just tell you the dollar amounts according to this. And I assume this is correct information. I'm embarrassed if it's not. Then couldn't find that tax statement, so let's jump from 2019 to 2020. The city collected $511,000 more. Not a lot at all. This past year, from 2020 to 2021, the city collected $1.6 million in revenue. So if you average this over 4 years, it's a little over $1 million a year, roughly, even though I don't have 1 year because I couldn't find the statements in all my records. Why do I say that? Let me boil it down to me personally. In the event that this commission pats itself on the back and says, hey, we kept the mill levy flat, just like they do every year, okay? Or they tweak it up a little, tweak it down a little, whatever the case may be. Let me tell you, based on the current mill levy and the projected appraised or assessed value in Riley County, y'all are going to have $3.5 million more. That's pretty significant. Now, you're going to be able to address some of the pay things out of that $3.5 million, I'm sure. But that's going to be the largest increase, revenue-wise, in years for the city. That is without, jacking up the mill rate or whatever the case may be. That's pretty significant, and that's coming out of the taxpayer's dollar. In my particular case, I get the privilege of investing another $451 if you keep the mill levy the same based on my assessed value. $451. I'm blessed right now. I can pay that $451. I can do that. But I got parents I have my wife's parents who just moved here. And who knows what theirs is going to do, probably not much this year, maybe next year. Fixed income in their mid-80s. Whew. They're going to be able to hit $450 more per year? What about all the rentals in town? Do you think the rental owners are going to take their $450 and give it to the city without getting it back from their tenants? You guys attribute to that. So I just want to say congratulations as public officials, because you have a real tough issue now right in front of you with regards to compensation, and as well as the revenue neutral issue that's going to be coming up here shortly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. It's been a long night.
It is.
My name's Melissa Rundis. I'm one of your 400-plus employees. I got to work for the city at 7:40 this morning, and I've seen my child about 40 minutes today. So I had to step out at the start of when we finally got to us, because he was calling to see if I was going to be home to put him to bed. And I feel like when I stepped out, I missed perhaps the important part of the evening I was here for, because I came back in and I started hearing these explanations and more comments about these top three. I work for the city of Manhattan. I live here. I love it. I love this community. I love serving this community and working for this organization even more. I can find a nice place to raise my child in Kansas. I'm a lifelong Kansan. I can't find another place like the city to work. There's a lot of talk about these top three and, you know, how is somebody going to feel if their supervisor gets a $30,000 raise in a year or this big bump? I don't care. I don't care who those top three are. I could probably look them up and I could probably find out. If they're that grossly underpaid, I'm so thankful that they're finally going to be paid at least a portion of what they're worth. Your city employees are a team. We are a team that work across several departments, several different pay positions, effectively and efficiently to serve your community. We serve on committees with each other, people who are hourly, people who are administration, department heads. We have faith and trust in our city team, in our fellow employees, in our department heads, and in our administrators. I don't know who those top three are. I don't know who the next 15 are. But what I do know is if my kiddo's sick at night and I know I'm going to have to stay home tomorrow and I run down to the courthouse to get some court files, at midnight, I can see Rena Niels in her office. She's got a family at home. She doesn't even live here, but she loves our community and serves us. And she's working at midnight. Eddie and Rob get emails and texts on the weekends all the time. Ron's been on vacation when he's texted me before. I've been on vacation when I got a text from Ron about a question a business owner had and a trespass issue. We don't mind. We're here to serve you and to serve the community that we love. Holy cow, how lucky are we to have Jason Hilgers? Every time I see an ad for some community looking for a city manager, somebody who wants to grow and have a vision, I get really scared. I think, oh, please don't let Jason leave, you know, because who has a vision for our community the way Jason does and sees it work out? I mean, going to college here and seeing Aggieville then and seeing Aggieville in Manhattan now, we have Ron and Jason to thank for that and the vision they have for this community and their dedication to our community. So I don't know if Ron and Jason are in those top three, but I sure hope they are, because I can't imagine our community if we lost them. I think instead of guessing about how employees would feel about knowing if their boss got a raise or if the person who works 2 offices over or the person who runs that machine got a raise and it was bigger than theirs, maybe you should talk to the employees, because we support our team and we want our team to get a raise. My boss is phenomenal. She should probably make twice what she makes. And if you asked anybody on her team, you'd probably learn we wouldn't want to work for anybody else. So I might fall in that large raise category. If I do, take my raise and give it to my boss, even if she's getting one, because I won't work for anybody else. You see us as faceless, nameless cogs in a machine. It is demoralizing as a city employee to watch city commission meetings. Demoralizing. We are the people who shop at your stores, go to your businesses, teach your kids Little League, volunteer at your church. We're your neighbors. We're your kids' friends' parents. And it does not feel that way when you watch city commission meetings. But when we work at the city together as a team, it is that way. We're a team, we work together. Police department calls and they want to know if something is a street or an alley. When did it change? Because they need to know how to write a ticket. I don't know, but I know I can call Brian Johnson on his phone, and if he's at the National Park at Yellowstone, he's still going to answer. And he's going to know how to get that answer in 5 minutes that I can give to the police department. Because he's been here that long, and he's that dedicated to this city. And you can't replace that efficiency and effectiveness that you have in our team. And when you start devaluing our leaders, you're going to lose that team.
Thank you, Melissa.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ben Schmiel. I'm a long-range planner for the City of Manhattan, and according to my job description, that means I perform long-range planning functions to guide the growth and development of the city in accordance with adopted comprehensive plans and regulations by using sound planning principles and practices. I also perform data collection research, I develop reports, plans, projections, and recommendations to inform critical planning decisions in our community. I want to thank Jason and the city manager's office for putting together this pay study, which tells us a lot of what I think people in my department and what other city employees around the organization kind of already do. I want to take us back to March of 2020 when the world was collapsing. We were preparing for the worst as the COVID pandemic creeped toward Manhattan. The economy was collapsing. Words like depression and recession were being thrown around. We were all labeled essential and non-essential. Hiring freeze was put into place. A wage freeze was put into place. We were told to do more with less and do it from home using technology that none of us were used to at the time. And we all feared for our jobs. And we sacrificed, and we did it very happily because, like my colleague just said, we love what we do. I love what I do. Fast forward to today, depression hasn't set in. Recession was very short-lived. Locally, we're seeing a lot of exciting things happen between stuff in Aggieville, Project Life, the Art Light Museum. Since March of 2021, we found out last week that inflation, or the consumer price index, has increased by 11.1%. I realize that was not the focus of the study, but I don't think it can be emphasized enough what kind of impact that is having on us as employees. During that same time, our pay has only increased by 4 to 6%, depending on if you've had a merit increase this year. Being April, I'm assuming most of us have not. So 11.1 compared to 4 to 6% over that time. And I can't speak for all of our departments, but in my department at least, our pay structure is very constraining. I've been here for 8 years. We've had a position in my department open for 3 years. Of the other 5 years, that position has turned over 4 times. We can't keep anyone longer than 1.5 years in that position. It's tough work, and we pay very little for it. In fact, we struggle to recruit for that position. People with a lot of experience and a lot of know-how have to beg for just even a couple thousand over that bare minimum that we offer, and it's affecting our department. I am doing things that are not in my job description. I'm doing things that other departments ask me to do because they don't have the time to do it. We all work together. We are happy to help each other out in those instances, but it affects what we do. Projects like the Art and Light Museum come forward, Project Life, we're asked to drop everything to attend to those those developments, and we just can't operate in this way. We're not firing on all cylinders. I myself am a planner. We cannot get to plans for things like downtown, Points Avenue, East Tuttle Creek. We can't get to those things because we're covering these vacant positions that we've had for years. And that affects, when development comes to town, we cannot react. We're reacting to it. We don't have proactive plans for it. As we all are aware well of in the last few weeks, time is money. That can be the difference between us missing out on a major economic development or obtaining it. I think management has put together a very sensible plan moving forward. We are underpaid. All those colleagues that I had that left, they'll come into my office and say, "Do you know how much they're paying you out there?" And I say, "Yes, but I love this city." And I just ask that you'll value us for the employees that we are. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Does anyone else wish to come forward? Okay. Seeing no one else, I'll close the public comment period. And does the commission have further questions?
Mayor, I want to make a motion. Okay, I want to move that we approve first reading of a revised 2022 salary ordinance implementing the updated classification and compensation system as recommended by the AGH Consulting Group.
I'll second that with knowing that we're going to get more information and it's not going to be on the consent agenda. We'll be able to actually have some more discussion about it next time. Is that possible?
Yes.
There you go, second.
I just want to clarify, does that mean we're going to get some sort of look at a phased-in approach?
So I guess what I heard commissioners say that at least two of you would like to see that broader phased-in approach. I heard Commissioner Hattasol say that a focus on the upper positions for a phased-in approach. So,
Guess a definition of the upper positions.
So you,
Yeah, I guess
50,
my thought, just to
54
clarify,
plus the 50.
I think the structure is fine, but it's the implementation. And maybe, as Mark said, you know, maybe we gotta limit the dollars, because it ties into what the taxpayer's talking about. You know, instead of saying 2 million this year, 1.5, because I know my discussions with you, you know, it's that compression thing, and you gotta go down and start looking at individual names. And it's tough to just say, okay, position 20 and down, we give a raise to, because there's variations in there. So maybe it's bottom line dollar for implementation rather than specifics. Because I don't have a problem with the structure. That gives you the flexibility to move people within there. But what people are concerned about out there is the bottom line dollar amount. And while, you know, I'm all for the flat mill levy, it's well stated that, you know, appraisals go up, but we're not gonna be anywhere near that revenue neutral rate. And it would be nice to be able to roll back the mill levy a little bit. That's been done once in 10 years, but without doing damage. And I do support, you know, all those people down at the lower end of the scale that are struggling the most, and also appreciate those at the top. You know, as I said, I thought, you know, some of the positions, and I pointed out the fire chief, probably way underpaid compared to what other places are. But I still want to see a more targeted approach and a phase in rather than these giant leaps forward. And as I said to begin, I'm probably 80% sold on the project, but it's not to the level I would like. And you know, the consultant wrote most of it. And so I think now it's time for the staff to take that and tweak it.
And I'm not interested in picking and choosing which employees get the most raise and which ones. I prefer an objective kind of analysis that gives us really good data overall. That's what we paid for. And
well, you paid for the study, but then I do think it's legitimate then to challenge the management to work on that phase and work on that structure, make it more palatable for us. I mean, I've done a lot of these. Some we did it ourselves in the study, some we got it. We almost always had to do some sort of phase in and tweak on it because we never could have everything we wanted. And I do appreciate the city staff, and I do appreciate what everyone is doing. But this is where, frankly, sometimes when you're in management, you have to make, hard decisions with it because you can't give everybody everything. And I do appreciate the calls on the weekends or at nights or whatever. And this doesn't mean that I don't appreciate what you do, but you have to stand out in the private sector. A lot of them are doing the same thing, and they don't necessarily have the flexibility to get those type of increases, and they see the tax implications of it. And they went through COVID, a lot of them essential. So I really think it is a, fiscal responsibility thing in a way where, if you look at everyone talking about here, is still getting you where you want to go. It just may take a little bit to get there versus everything all at once.
I think we've made some hard decisions in the past years too, when we didn't raise the budget at all, when we didn't, for several years, we just barely raised the mill levy. We made hard decisions then, but it's this compression that we were also contributing to this compression that's taken place. And I appreciate the city management's commitment to not raise the mill levy for 3 years. I also would like to see, when speakers talked about the valuation going up and how much revenue that will generate, that will help us balance, if there's going to be an influx of money from that, then we don't have to, there's got to be a little balancing take place of the total.
I think with the motion I made, we can adjust it a little bit, but I want to be clear exactly what the motion's going to be. So when we say first reading of the revised 2020 salary ordinance implementing an updated classification and compensation system as recommended by AG Consulting Group, if there needs to be an addition or an addendum to that, I'd rather have it be like, when I think phased, I don't want it years of phasing. I'm thinking more like 6 months or a year or something of that sort, but not to prolong it. Then the study's worthless.
Yeah, just point of
Exactly.
clarification, the direction to me to bring you back a implementation aspect doesn't need to be part of the motion. Other than
Okay.
clearly 3 of you have given me that direction. So the classification system, as you've all described, sets the framework that we operate in, and that's a key piece of it, and gets us that spread that we need to be able to adjust and implement within. What I'm hearing is you're looking for a lower ultimate budget impact of the implementation. And the concern is at the higher end, and as I've told several of you, part of that, the biggest chunk of the funds are in the middle group, and that's where they're the most compression. And in visiting with Carrie, who's on the line lately, is that, it covers grades 8 to 21. They're all, it really does matter about who's been with the organization and that they haven't got those increases. They didn't get the pay study implementation because only the bottom level got it, and that just moved everybody closer to there. So there is huge compression, and it's not an easy issue to solve, but we'll do our best to come back with a recommendation that we hope will meet your expectation.
Appreciate this.
There's a lot of people wearing a lot of hats,
Yeah.
as you heard.
Yeah, I appreciate all of this discussion, and I know it's getting late, so.
So I made a motion.
Yes, and I want to ask
Mark second.
I want to ask the city clerk to call the roll.
Commissioner Motta?
I agree with everything we said, but because of the way that it's written right now, I'm still going to vote no. But I am ready, once this comes back, to take a hard look at voting yes when we've got that new schedule.
Mayor Morse?
Yes.
Commissioner Hassel?
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy?
Yes.
Commissioner Butler?
I'm gonna vote no, but I'm hoping we're gonna see what I expect to see the next time it comes up, and then I can support it perhaps.
Motion carries 3-2.
Oh, we're not done yet.
We're not done yet. We have an agenda item. Thank you all for attending, assuming you're here, still here for the pay study. We moved an agenda item from the consent agenda, actually a couple, to the general agenda. So if you want to stay on for that, you're welcome to. It has to do with the appointments to boards and committees. So at this point, we will continue the discussion about appointments. And in the packet are some appointments that the mayor has proposed to make that will require the city commission to endorse it or support it. And so let me try to find a copy of it. There we go. So there seems to be some discussion necessary here. Who is going to address that?
John called it to the end.
Okay, the first one that we have is the reappointment of Thomas Hanson to the Historic Resource Board. I think we really need to take a hard look at the Historic Resource Board. I've gotten a lot of comments from the community about a lot of, frustration. I think we really need a nuanced approach with this. We need someone who, appreciates history, appreciates development, but also realize we still are a growing city and is able to work in new pieces, new construction, and fit it into that, historic design. We need some nuance there with it. I think a good point was brought up when we did the Art and Light Museum, when someone said if we had that board back when the Wareham was first being proposed, we wouldn't have approved the Wareham. And I think we need people who are looking backwards as well as looking forward. And again, with the Light Museum, we were looking at, it was the transition of the area and how do you work that transition and how do you fit that in? Again, there's nuance to that for it to come about. So and this is someone in a reappointment. I really haven't appreciated some of the votes. And I think we, again, need to get someone who really appreciates that history but has that nuanced approach to it and can combine the old with the new in a, manner that fits with how the Historic Resource Board is supposed to function.
I think
Yeah,
that,
I
I
can
think
concur
the
with that.
Historic Resources Board actually functioned as our process describes. The planning board, or the Historic Resources Board voted in good faith. We appoint people to review. When it comes to the city commission then, our criteria was different than their criteria. They could not consider the financial impact. That was something we had to consider. So the system worked. I don't see it as a reason to destroy or do away with the
I disagree,
Historic
and
Resources Board.
Went to the Military Relations Board after that meeting, was just mobbed with people that wanted to share their frustration about that and so many other decisions that have been made. And again, we just disagree.
Yeah, and I wanted to just comment, I've been very disappointed in the recommendations of the Historic Resources Board. It started with all the hassle they gave on the community house, that was praised tonight. And the guy got nothing but grief, trying to stay within the lines of the Historic Board. I thought it was horrible what they did with the fraternity and also with the Boys and Girls Club project, and an absolute disaster on the Light Museum. So my personal opinion is, and just to be clear, everybody currently on that Historic Resources Board, I will probably not vote to have any of them reappointed. And it's just that simple. We need some fresh people in there with some better outlooks.
For any board, even for the plan, is my mic on? So even the Parks and Rec Board, for example, they came to us about Warner Park and disc golf. We've had other boards that came to us where we are the final decision makers. We never, even if you put new people on there, you don't know how they're going to vote. The people that are on here, there is a certain requirement that they had to meet. And if a community member wants to serve on a board, they're not getting paid. they're a volunteer position, and they're looking at it from the criteria they have to look at it from. I think it gives us a chance to bring their expertise to the conversation and to their charge, what they're there for, and then for us to be the final decision makers. You can look at even the Social Services Board, Advisory Board, you can look at any one of those boards. There were many times we didn't agree with several of those boards' decisions. But just to replace them because you don't like the way they voted, although their criteria was what they were looking at, I think is kind of insulting for the people that want to serve. I think they probably put in the work, they showed up, they read their materials, they paid attention, they asked questions, and they voted the best way they can on that issue that evening. And we don't have to agree with it. We don't have to agree with it, and many times we haven't with other boards also. But if that's the only reason you don't want to vote for the slate that's been for the Historic Resources Board, I cannot agree with that type of reasoning and rationale for why none of them should be on there.
We're talking about one.
Well, I covered the whole existing board, and you're right.
But they're
And you
not
may
on
not
the
like my reasoning, but I don't want to have to go through quasi-judicial boards and some of the stuff that I just thought was insane on those last four. And I hadn't felt that way in the past, and I appreciate what the boards do. But as far as I'm concerned, they're way off the rails on supporting which way we're going here. And that's where I'm at.
The problem was last time, after the Art and Light Museum discussion, we went back and forth with Katie and SHPO and how we opted out of the SHPO thing, which gives us our own board. But with that, we brought a process that leaves the city commission almost powerless at times to overrule the Historic Resources Board. If it was a strictly, they could make a decision strictly based on the historic thing, and then when we look at it from a big picture, economic impact, betterment for the community, helping out the kids, things that we as a commission have to consider, we don't have the ability to consider. They've already taken the decision away from us. And as we got done with that discussion, we looked at each other and said, the only way we can change this is change the members of the board. And as far as I'm concerned, yeah, it's 3 strikes and you're out based on the Lee School, based on especially the Boys and Girls Club thing, and really with the Art and Light thing. And they have the ability to weigh the economic impact. They have the ability to look at the big picture too, while they're charged with looking at the historic part of it. They can consider more than just the historic part, and I think that's the thing that's really gotten under our skin, is the fact that there's just we could still do stuff. There's still historical things that need to be considered on items, but based on the process that we have, the commission has less power than the Historic Resources Board, and I can't live with that.
I think that I learned on the last 1 or 2 of those discussions from the historic preservation people, that there are ways to work on an historic project and make changes and make some, you can get there by working through that process. And I don't understand it all, but it is not as rigid as, some of this has to do with the applicant not wanting to jump through some hoops. So it's not all that, doesn't have to be as contentious.
I move that we deny appointment 1D.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny the reappointment of Thomas Hanson to a 3-year history, because he's a history specialist, which begins immediately and would expire April 30th of 2025. And so would the city clerk call the roll?
Mayor Morse,
No.
Commissioner Hassel,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy,
No.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta.
Yes.
Motion carries 3-2.
Okay, then I want to talk about, because John put on there to pull E off of there, which has got two new appointments to the board, Mick Charney and I think Brian McFarland, I believe, is here tonight. I do want to say, I called both of them. I was able to call them both and talk to them, and I don't have any problem with that. I think, Brian gave me a pretty good handle, sort of like, how Mark feels about looking at this on a bigger picture. And I think that's a philosophical change from some of the current board members. And he might not always vote the way I like, but I think philosophically closer in line to which way we're going. And when I talked to Mick, he knew a little bit less about these past four things that I talked about. He didn't know the details of it, but he sort of gave me the impression that he would follow some rational problem solving and not go hard over. And I was especially impressed because he said there was a little bit of a difference between an old building and an historic building. And that seems to be one of my hang-ups. So I don't have a problem with supporting those two appointments.
Well, and I quite possibly, Dr. Charney may be the smartest person we've ever put on the Historic Resources Board, the most qualified. So I would support both of those two new appointments also.
Okay, I move that we approve the appointments of 1E.
I'll second.
City Clerk, would you call the roll?
Commissioner Hassel,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Mayor Morse.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
So for the future, I have to appoint someone with your political bent in order to get it through this
We
commission?
tried to work with you on this, where we could
No,
debate these out
we
beforehand,
we
and we
said we
could
would
do
have
it.
processes, we would agree to some policies and processes for appointments in June. So
No,
I'm
we
just
said way
working
back, we
through
talked at that first meeting about doing it during those sessions that we have before this one for the 2 weeks forward, so we could debate out those. You don't have to pick someone who believes with me philosophically, but I'm not necessarily just going to vote for someone that I don't think should be on any one of the boards.
So the more anonymous somebody is, the more chance the person has to get
No,
through your
not
approval.
necessarily.
Well, what
I
are we
didn't, these
talking
people
about?
weren't anonymous that we just,
What are we talking about here?
As far as I'm concerned, this is a one-shot deal with the Historic Resources Board change. I don't really feel strongly about any of the other appointments for any other boards at this point. And I was totally fine with everybody else and everybody else this year. It's just the Historic Resources Board
Okay.
makeup
So
has been
we're
a
gonna-
problem, so.
We're gonna purge the existing people on the Historic Resources Board,
necessarily.
is what you're saying.
Not necessarily.
No, that's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. That's what, well,
That's
he
what you're
said that.
saying. That's what you're,
Well, we'll
three of
see.
you
We'll
are
see what
saying.
happens over the next year. And if over the next year, we don't have to try to overturn them all the time, because we can't hardly very well, then there's no reason to think that we won't have to get rid of the other ones if they.
Get rid of?
Not renew, not reappoint anybody, depending on what kind of happens with their decisions over the next year.
But our current process is, the mayor makes a recommendation, but the commission gets to vote on it. And so if three commissioners do not want the person on the board, for whatever reason, we have the ability and authority to vote no, and that's just how it is. Now, I know in the past, long time ago, maybe they said the mayor just makes the appointments and everybody just rubber
No,
stamps.
that was up through December of 2021, when you were mayor. The commission respected your appointment.
no,
for
people
that.
didn't approve all of mine, didn't approve all of his.
No, the first time I was on,
We
that's
did
when you
not
guys threw that
reject
out the
one
window.
of your appointments last year, not one.
Correct.
We didn't challenge them. We respected your political philosophy on who you appointed, people who,
The commission before wouldn't put who Win wanted onto the law board, so I actually resigned for the law board to open up a position so he could
I'm
get one of
just
his people
talking
on.
about I've been on.
We're talking about the
since
history of
I've
the
been-
commission.
You are talking 10, 12 years ago. I'm
Still history.
talking last year. And that's my frame of reference, was when's mayor, period. And I was mayor one other time, and we didn't have a challenge to so you are, in essence, establishing new criteria of your own making that
It's
We're
always
going
been,
to
it's
have
always been a
to-
majority of the commission to
We're
approve the
going to,
board.
no, we have not
Always
had these
always have.
kinds of challenges before with regard to appointments to boards.
It's always been 3 commissioners to approve a board.
And
Yes,
maybe-
it takes
maybe-
3
maybe,
votes,
Linda,
but I'm
maybe-
talking about the challenging that you're taking on of embarrassing people who are nominated.
That's why we wanted to have those early discussions.
And I challenge the appointments to the law board. I think when Commissioner Reddy did them last year, because I don't agree. And of course, 2 of those people weren't present today when you had a budget vote, which is why I challenged it. So I think that's just gonna
That's
happen.
why we put the budget
The reality
vote
is,
off,
it's perfectly
was
correct.
because we didn't have a
Yeah,
full
it's-
board.
It's perfectly correct in procedure for us to challenge any appointments
Yes,
the mayor makes.
it can happen. So if those are the rules that you're establishing, then we will all know what they are in the future. And it won't be just surprise. So thank you for, this discussion, because it needed to happen.
And it did need to happen in public.
That's right, and
It
not at
can't
the
happen
briefing
in a briefing
session
session.
with not one member
The
of the public.
briefing sessions
here.
are public, and we should really make them public,
Right.
because it's the
Well,
only
they're
time we get a
public.
chance to
But when we
talk.
vote.
And they
people
are
need-
public.
Yeah, they need to understand your rationale, because typically what happens is, these are all volunteers. They're wanting to do good in the community. They're thinking about volunteering their time away from their home, their families, and we're just judging them on some nebulous criteria we have a feeling about. We don't like the way they voted on this issue. We just know this or know that, or let me check this out.
Well,
Or I
there's-
call them and they vote the way I like they vote.
Well, there's no better criteria to determine how you think somebody is doing on a board than how they vote. And so I say this is pretty much a one-shot deal for me, but it is one of those things where John's idea of trying to talk about this a little bit ahead of time would have allowed, if there wasn't going to be support for a candidate, you could pull them off the appointment list before we got to that point. And so that's, and I don't, like I say, I don't think this is going to be an ongoing issue.
I'm
It's
not so
just-
sure.
Well, we haven't finished the evening's business because we have 1F left to go. So I have nominated Annie Cook and Lakeisha James to be reappointed to the Human Rights and Services Board. Thank you. So what is your opinion on them? Why is it pulled off?
Lakeisha, I think is great. She hasn't been on there long. But I think she will continue to do fantastic. She's only been on for a short period of time. Annie Cook's been on longer. I'd like to get some new blood onto that board, so I'd prefer to go with somebody else.
Annie Cook was on 1 term because you can only serve 2. So you're saying 1 term pretty much, okay, disqualifies you.
No, not saying disqualified. I think we've got some
Lakeisha
people who
must have
applied that
served
could
a
be,
part of a term.
could do very well in the
Lakeisha must
position.
have served, did Lakeisha just serve a part of a term then?
Yeah.
Ah, so a part of a term is okay, but 1 full term isn't.
But you can sit there and be your little sarcastic
No,
all you
I-
want.
She's absolutely right, because you're basing it on quality leadership because you feel like that wasn't good enough, whereas somebody's been there a short term. Both of them are really good people.
Exactly.
Both of them are serving really well.
I'm proposing to reappoint both of them.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with Lakeisha. I think she's excellent. I don't think Cook should be reappointed. I'd like to see Carmen Schroeder appointed. I read all the people that put it in. I think she'd be better at it.
Well,
I move we accept Annie Cook and Lakeisha James to the Human Rights and Services Board.
How do we do that when there's 2?
I second the
Well, you
motion.
vote it down if you don't like it, and then we'll create a second one.
I second the motion. Therefore, the city clerk should call the roll.
Commissioner Reddy,
Yes.
Commissioner Butler,
Isn't it possible for us to amend a motion?
We'll just make a new motion.
Not without the
Okay.
originator
Okay,
approving.
we vote this down, and then we'll make a new
Okay,
motion.
then I'm gonna have to vote no, though I like Lakeisha.
No.
Mayor Morse,
Yes.
Commissioner Hassel,
No.
motion fails 2-3.
I move that we approve the reappointment of Lakeisha James to the Human Rights and Services Board.
I'll second.
City Clerk, would you call the roll? This is like a ping pong match.
Said he wasn't gonna do that.
Commissioner Butler,
Yes.
Commissioner Motta,
Yes.
Mayor Morse,
Yes?
Commissioner Hattasol,
Yes.
Commissioner Reddy.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
And your objections to Annie Cook are what?
I'd just like to get some new perspectives on the board.
So you.
I move that we
No objection.
appoint Carmen Schrober to the Human Rights and Services Board.
I'll second that.
Who is she? Did you read it? Yes, I did, but I don't have total recall from 3 weeks ago.
So, point of order.
Thank you.
The mayor's charged with making recommendations. She should have the right to make a new application if you don't want that particular
If,
person.
if you reject it, then I just nominate someone else. Absolutely not.
Let's call it a night.
Just, your ordinance just states that the board member has to be appointed by the mayor with the advice and consent of the governing body. So that input and advice is appropriate, but the original appointment has to come from the mayor based on your current ordinance.
So you've given advice and you have not given consent, so I will have to nominate someone else.
Okay, but that wasn't what we followed when I made the law board appointments a few years ago. It was okay to say, no, we don't agree with your appointments, and we want to put these people in. That worked fine then. So what's changed?
Well, I just read to you the ordinance for for this particular board. So the Human Rights and Services Board has a specific ordinance that I just read. So I'd have to look at the law review, the statute.
Okay.
The statute governs, the law review, the
Okay,
law
what-
board. The statute governs the law board, and I think it says the governing body, but I can confirm that for you, Commissioner. I just
Okay.
read from this specific
Okay,
board.
so
All right,
what we'll
then.
need to do is do an ordinance to change that if we want to, obviously if we want to change it.
Yeah, we can, that's something I'd like to see us add to a future agenda. We need to adjust that so that board appointments recommended by the mayor, approved by the city commission, and if not approved, then people on the city commission
Should-
can make recommendations for a replacement immediately,
Won't that be fun?
based on the interest forms that are submitted, of course. Can't just be pulling somebody out of the air. And I think that would streamline the procedure.
We're not voting on any of that.
No.
Where are we now? Who did you adjourn, right? Okay, we have a motion and a second
For what?
to.
No, it was an improper motion.
Okay, all right. So, I think we're ready to adjourn. We are adjourned. Thank you.